I'm Tom, this is Tactical Breach Wizard. Me and a small team have been working on this for about 6.5 years now, and as of today, it's done. It's out. You can buy it. In fact, please do, because we spent 6.5 years on it, and now we really need it to sell. It's a turn-based tactics game where you have a small team of wizards in Kevlar and modern-day tactical gear, and it's about finding ways to combine their spells to solve the combat encounters you're in. And the way we enable you to do that is we let you rewind your turn as many times as you like. So rather than just sitting there and asking yourself, how does this ability work, just try using it and see what happens. And if you're stuck and you can't see a good solution to the problem you're facing, try a bad solution. It probably won't work, but if you try it, you might realize, oh, if I set a predictive bolt up in advance and then use Jen's chain shock to push somebody into it, that's a way we can take out 2 people with 1 action. Maybe if I now rewind and use that somewhere else, there's actually a way to clear this whole room in 1 turn. So basically it's a game that helps you have clever ideas even if you have no clever ideas. As mentioned, we have kind of a lot riding on this now, and the thing that's going to make or break us is how well it does in launch week. So we're doing the usual launch discount, it's 10% off this week, but we also wanted to do something extra to thank the people who support us at launch. So we put together a little pack of outfits. They're called the WizTac set, and they look like this. They've got a kind of future tech vibe that we didn't go for in the main game. They're purely cosmetic like all the other outfits in the game, and you get these if you buy the game in launch week. If you miss launch week, they'll still be available as part of the special edition, so you can never miss out on them completely, but if you buy in launch week, you just get them for free. Alright, I should probably tell you a bit more about the game, shouldn't I? It's a very story-driven campaign, it's about 15 hours long, all the levels are handcrafted, there's no random generation. It's got pretty extensive difficulty options, so you're not likely to find it too hard or too easy, and we're really proud of it, so I hope you have a good time with it.
Hey, Tom.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us. Welcome to DICE.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Is this your first DICE? You've been to a...
Yep, first DICE, first time in Vegas.
Oh, wow. Double whammy straight away.
It's been a culture shock.
How's the dryness of your lips going? And you got the air conditioning like made its way into your pores?
Yeah, I mean, I've barely been outside. I'm just in this one massive complex. I thought I was going to have to walk all of 10 minutes outside to get here from my hotel, but actually I didn't even have to do that. I was walking for about 10 minutes inside my hotel, and then there's just a tram that goes from that hotel to this hotel. So it's all one big complex as far as I can tell.
There's a lot of architecture marvels is maybe one of the ways, one of the ways to put it in Las Vegas. But for me, it is the fact that you can literally never go outside, basically, if you want to. They're all connected. You just walk from one to the other, even Yeah. And they're all just like a safari of bizarre exhibits that range from the grossest, tackiest shit you've ever seen in your life to genuinely really impressive and artful things. And with no distinction, just in the same building. One of my favorite things to do at Vegas is to go to I think it's called Paris, the casino, and sit over there in their fake European street with the terrace outside and the painted ceiling with and the guys going through with the gondolas in the little indoor canals, and sit there and have a coffee and pretend I'm on the streets of Paris in La Marais or something. All right, well, hey dude, I've known you for a bunch of time. We've obviously had a bunch of chats about the industry and getting together and sharing indie knowledge and wisdom in the dark arts where we can. But I'm so glad to be able to get a chance to sit down with you today because as I was mentioning to you just before the talk, it's about a 15-hour flight over here to Vegas from Melbourne, and about 13 hours of that I played Tactical Breach Wizard, so I'm ready to go. But let's take it right back to the start, as we usually do on this podcast, because you have a really interesting journey in games, and there's a number of great little points and stories that we'll get into. But I'd love to go back to young Tom in the UK. His first sort of the first memory that you have of video games setting your brain alight, or if you could trace, you being in this room in Vegas with me back to a sort of point where you're I guess that was it. How did games come about for you?
Yeah, I think our first games capable machine was a BBC Micro, which is a UK specific device. It was part government funded for educational.
It's literally BBC.
Yeah,
that BBC.
That BBC.
Okay, wow, yeah.
And I don't think I did play games on that. Like they came on 5.25-inch floppy disks, the actual floppy disks back when disks were floppy.
Yes.
In my day, disks were floppy. That feels like a very brief period. I don't think it was like it was hugely sparked in my head. It was like just a fun thing, like it is for most kids. Although not most kids at that time, I think. I was kind of ahead of the curve a bit on that. And then when we got a PC, my dad got a PC. We bought PC World, the magazine, and they keep a reviews database, or back then they did.
Yeah.
Like in the magazine, just a giant table of their highest scoring games ever. The top two were Monkey Island 2 and Ultima Underworld. And so we bought both those games. And both of those are formative memories. Like Monkey Island, obviously, just the writing was brilliant. I was a huge Douglas Adams fan at the time, and there's such an overlap there. And I think the intersection between Monkey Island 2 and Douglas Adams is sort of core to my style. That's kind of what I'm aiming for most of the time.
A lot of things are coming together, even at this early beginnings of the story.
Yeah. And the atmosphere of that game is beautiful as well. Like the music's so good, and it just like it's transportative, it just takes you to another place.
And how old are you around this time?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I want to say like 16 maybe.
Yeah, okay, cool.
And Ultima Underworld then was a real like turning point of realizing that a game could be a world, beyond just you're trying to win, beyond just like a challenge. And it was, this is one of the earliest first person games, and you are plunged into a dungeon. It's very dark, and you have to like click arrows on screen to move. But I seem to remember it's like smooth movement, right? It's not like stepped movement. So it was like a fully rendered 3D world, and it was just very awkward to walk around. But early on, you're just fighting like bats and goblins and stuff. But the moment it kind of like clicked for me was running into, I can't remember if it was goblins or orcs, but finding some that didn't immediately attack you. And then you can talk to them and you can trade with them. And then if you like get them on your side, you can then walk into their little like section of the dungeon, which is their own little village. And there's just like, people with different jobs and just like living their lives down there. And that was like, what? This is like a place. This is like there's a whole world down here that kind of has its own internal logic and makes a certain amount of sense. And that game also had an amazing sense of discovery, because it was obviously this is easier to accomplish when it's one of the first games you ever played. But like I just had no concept of what might be down there.
Yes, of course.
Every time you discover like a new item, it's something you've never seen and didn't know could exist.
It's like the bounds of the simulation in your mind just like fly out to the horizon again. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so hard to do now. Like both because of the number of games that exist, and also because the wealth of experience that any given player has.
And the online, everything that anyone discovers goes immediately onto a wiki as well, right?
Yeah. There's no secrets anymore.
We're living in a post-secret video game world.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Now, usually around this point, I would be asking folks if they were tinkering on games, but I mean, developing games actually came later in your life in the games industry, which we'll get to, but was there any kind of tinkering on the games, like any yourself?
Yeah, there was a couple of little brief moments with it. I actually remember, even on the BBC Micro, my dad showed me how to like program an ASCII duck to appear on screen and just like move to the left.
Awesome.
Not a game, but he was a electrical engineer and programmed microprocessors.
Cool.
And so, he had a programming experience. And I don't really remember the sort of context in which he taught me that, whether he was like trying to get me into it as a career path or just like curiosity. But I remember being like interested in that, but didn't sort of, spark anything particularly for me then. Then there were a couple of things on PC, like a really early game making tool. Oh, Click and Play. Me and my sister, I think, both messed around with that. And I did make like a little top-down shooter thing that would technically have been my first ever game. That was, again, like 17 years old or something.
Cool, right?
Yeah. I can picture what it looked like. Obviously, no copies of it exist or no images of it exist. But I remember drawing the little sprites, and I should have learned then that drawing things from top down is incredibly difficult. And much later, I would give that task to our artist, John Roberts, and be like,
it's fine. Yeah, I did it when I was
Make everything
17.
super clear from a perfect top-down perspective with no angles and no way to show depth or height. But yeah, that I think I got pretty into that. I don't remember like if I bounced off it, if I like gave up on it or anything. I don't remember a moment like that of thinking like this isn't for me. I think it just didn't sort of amount to much. But I was still super interested in games. I didn't really like dream about becoming a game developer back then. I think like most people, I just didn't imagine it was possible.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I didn't even know that it was possible. Right. Like, yeah, for sure.
It's funny. There's that state where it's not that you don't know that people make games, but you just don't know anyone who does.
Yes.
And you don't know the names of anyone who made the games that you like.
And then also even the thing about your dad showing you the programming, that's like a point of being exposed to it in one angle. But then, like, for example, we didn't have PCs that we played games on, really. So I was a console household. And so then modding was completely obfuscated to me. For like, the closest I got to even really learning about modding before I was 18 was Age of Empires, like, had a map making mode. Like, that was it, but no online communities or anything. And so it's completely different to now, where it's like kids are making games in Fortnite and Roblox. Like, literally in the games that they're playing, they're able to make more games and sort of learning about the industry.
Yeah, I was always PC. I wasn't allowed a console, so I grew up without Mario and without most Japanese games are kind of alien to me because I don't have the nostalgic connection with them.
Do you still? Yeah. Oh, right. You are saying now, they do feel still alien to you because there isn't that sort of.
Like Tears of the Kingdom is the first Zelda game that I really clicked with. And Breath of the Wild I liked, but I didn't love it. And I think part of it was it wasn't triggering any nostalgia. I don't care about these characters. I don't know, like this. None of this means anything to me. I'm interested in the emergent stuff, but that didn't quite come together. And Breath of the Wild, clicked for me because of the crazy creativity in it. And
but further down the spectrum, like your Personas, your Final Fantasies, never dabbled
never played
in
a Persona,
that.
never played a Final Fantasy. I played Three Houses. What's it called? Fire Emblem. I played Three Houses and enjoyed that. But there's huge gaps in my knowledge. And I actually think that's kind of I don't know if influence is the right word, like anti-influence on Gunpoint. Because it's got a weird jumping mechanic, right? It doesn't, you don't jump like you do in other platformers. And that's because I didn't grow up with platformers.
Of course,
and so it's not that I didn't know about making games like that.
How do you make a jump in a video game? God,
Truth is, I just don't like it. Like, I came to like, I've never played like a Mario game all the way through, but platformers like that model of platforming where the jump button launches you vertically, and then while you're in the air, you can still move left and right. That just makes no sense to me. It doesn't really feel good.
Like,
it doesn't. I need to know what the physical forces are that are like why am I moving left and right? How am I propelling myself? Like,
we console kids. We don't consider ourselves as such things. Okay, so you're dabbling a little bit, like with your sister on this top-down thing, and then coding and stuff, playing games. What's happening? Do you go to uni? And like you're saying, you're no real idea that you could make games, so it's not even on your horizon at that point. But you obviously ended up, as we said, like games industry adjacent or games industry, right? So
actually, towards the end of it's called sixth form in the UK, between high school and university. Me and a friend, we were really into. Actually, I don't think I was really into Quake 2, but we were making a Quake 2 mod. Because I think I guess like the first proper dabblings with like creating stuff for games was making maps with Duke Nukem 3D.
Yes.
Because that had a level editor that shipped with it, and I got quite immersed in that, and it was fun to just that the map editing then was much easier than it is now. Like if you try to make a map for like a 3D game, you got a lot to learn right off the bat. Whereas that you're just drawing a map like you would for like an RPG campaign or something. You're just making little lines,
painting it down,
top
with the
down,
tools.
And then it's a 3D world when you go in it because they didn't have to worry about verticality because they couldn't do it anyway. That was really exciting. And me and a friend of mine, we were making a mod, but we thought that it could be an expansion pack, like that we could sell it. And the legality of that was just a grey area to us. So we didn't really.
Sure, we can figure that out later. That's lawyer stuff.
So I was doing level editing for that, and I think I even did some art, weirdly, which I've never had a talent for, and a bit of writing, but it wasn't like very story driven. I guess like world building I was doing for that, but never went anywhere, never finished it. Just sort of messing around with this thing. It's funny, I don't really remember the ends of any of these things. I don't really remember like stopping or abandoning it or deciding we would stop. I think things just like trail off, right?
Yes, yeah, of course. It's like a series that you start and then you're like, oh, it wasn't bad, but I don't know why I stopped watching that. Yeah.
Yeah. But around that time, funnily enough, even then, I don't think I was fantasizing about becoming a game developer. But I was fantasizing about being a games journalist because we were reading PC Zone, which is the first PC games magazine in the UK. PC Gamer didn't exist at that point. And it was it was a funny magazine. It was very like irreverent, I guess. And it was a sense of humor that I was into at the time. And yeah, the idea of like playing games and then getting to like say funny things about them. Yeah. That sounded like a dream job.
It's like the Douglas Adams meets PC Zone.
Yeah.
PC Zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And there was such a, I mean, in the UK, obviously, like especially through the 90s and like 2000s, there's such a strong, like, I mean, being from Australia, I was reading N64 Gamer, right, which is like a UK mag. And I was always having to like do the conversion of, and also because PAL territories back then with retail distribution, like I was like, okay, well, I know that those games are in PAL, so they're going to come to me, but when is it? How much is it? As a kid, I'm like, how many pounds is $1? And like, what am I going to, I loved it. But the most tragic thing for me reading that magazine was I was so hyped for Harvest Moon 64 when it was going to come out, and then it never got an Australian release. But like, because I'm reading a UK mag, they're like, next month it's coming out or whatever. And I'm like walking into the store in Melbourne and it's not there. Yeah, that was a lesson hard learned. But so how did you did you just kick the door down sort of Gunpoint style, or how'd you get in there?
No, I once again forgot about it and did not pursue it in any way. I guess I sort of meandered around not really pursuing either of these careers a long time before I got into them. Because it didn't seem like a real job that I could get or that would, sustain me. And I think it was sort of drummed into me by my parents very, very subtly, not directly, that you need like a solid, proper career that makes a good amount of money. I was always pretty good at maths, and I knew that was like, a good foundation for a lot of different careers that pay well. And so I was looking at, I had to actually think about what job I'd end up in. I was thinking about being an actuary, which is someone who calculates probabilities for an insurance company. Yeah. They are very well paid. Paid better to train as an actuary than you are at most jobs.
Wow.
And that was the calculus on careers, was like, what can I do and how much does it pay?
Yep.
Because it's just like, it wasn't that I was scared about money exactly, but like anxious, I guess, about like, you need that part to be extremely solid and just like the best possible chance of the most solid income, so that you're not having to worry about that isn't, you can't just, run out of money and be in serious trouble.
Yep.
So yeah, something like games journalism wasn't really on my radar or it wasn't a thing I was going to seriously pursue.
Famously high-paying job, by the way, in games journalism.
Yeah, I mean, it's low-paying in general, but I think even in that field, non-UK games journalists are shocked when they learn how little UK games journalists earn, like close to minimum wage.
Yeah, shit.
So the way I actually ended up getting into it was after university, I didn't have any particular idea where I wanted to live, but I didn't want to continue living with my parents. Just wanted to go out on my own. And a friend of mine was still at Bath University. We'd actually started university. We started university at the same time. I went to Southampton and he went to Bath. And he was doing a 4-year course, so he was still there for another year. And we were like online friends, but quite close. And we thought about like, should we get a place together? So we did that, and that's why I moved to Bath. And that is where PC Gamer are based. And actually, again, it feels like I kept refusing the call and it kept somehow reaching out to me because my sister also lived in Bath, and her boyfriend at the time worked on like 3D World at Future Publishing, which is the publishing company that PC Gamer is part of. And there was a referral program where you get like 300 quid if you refer somebody for a job and they get it. And he noticed there was an opening at PC Gamer and was like, oh, would your brother like that? And referred me. and I went for it. That was for disc editor. So the person who puts together the demos and trailers and stuff on the cover disc that came with the magazine.
Oh, wow.
Which they don't do anymore, I believe.
Yeah. I never even thought that would be a job. But of course, that's got to be someone's responsibility.
It's one of those
right?
jobs where like no one even thinks it needs to be done. It's like, that's such a minor contribution to the magazine where it doesn't even occur to people that anyone has to do that. It used to be like a temp person, I think, who was, I think it was someone who was doing the cover disc for multiple different magazines all at once.
Yeah.
And then I was, I think the first like dedicated person where like that was what I was doing most of the time. And the month that I joined, they switched from a normal DVD to a double-sided DVD. So the amount of content just doubled. And I also took it upon myself to redesign the interface for it because I didn't like the existing one, and I had to learn Macromedia Director. And
Macromedia Director is what Solium Infernum is made in, the original. Yeah, in Lingo, the now archaic and defunct like programming language that you obviously worked in to make that happen.
Yeah, I didn't even know the name of it. It was just it just picked up little bits that I needed to do what I wanted to do. I remember I was really proud of this at the time, and now I realize I should have been ashamed of it. When you click on the tabs, like trailers, demos, in the interface, the way it jumps to that section is it actually reads the string of the text that you've clicked on and then looks that up and like, oh, that's so neat. I just need to write that once. There's no like separate variable for it. It's just...
That's so good.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by this. Like, let's do a quick detour. How did those discs come about? I've never had someone in the room who was like responsible. That was again another mystery thing. It's like, would the publishers approach you with kind of like demos, or how they get curated?
Luckily, this was the internet existed, so I was going out and finding them online, and basically anything that was released publicly was in theory fair game. Or, essentially. You expect to be able to get the rights to all that stuff, and so I was not worrying about what stuff was available to us, or we would just grab that stuff. For big games, we would have a relationship with like the PR and the publisher, and they would get us demos ahead of time before they're going out publicly, because we would have like a 3-week lead time between finishing the magazine and the disc, and then it actually hitting shelves. So everything was late. All like anything. Half of what you write for a magazine, you're writing, 3 weeks before deadline. Yep. So it's 6 weeks before anyone's actually going to read it. Luckily, the games industry doesn't move very fast.
Yeah.
And
Do you remember what the sort of the circulation or like readership was kind of around that time?
No, I don't.
No.
I think like tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands.
Wow.
This is for a UK magazine, so
of course,
a kind of a smaller market.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was like, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, there was the RAMS, which is the Rights Access Management System, which is everything that's going on the cover disc. You put it in that, and then the legal department goes and actually clears and gets permission for everything.
Of course.
But you kind of know, like with the big publishers, it was just understood that would always be fine. They're not going to put something out publicly that they don't want to be on the cover disc.
Yes,
but then actually, for smaller stuff like mods and like player created stuff, I was having to reach out to people manually and just say like, "Hey, is it all right if we put this on our disc?"
And what would the response usually be? Would they freak out and be like, "Oh my god, yes"?
Yeah, a lot of the time, people were just like thrilled about it.
Yeah, I guess you're like the streamers of the time almost, right? It's like, we're going to cover your game.
It's a weird power dynamic because you're going to them like kind of hat in hand of like, "Hey, this thing that you made, can we basically sell it?" Because we do, like we do charge not just for the magazine but the disc itself, because there used to be like a CD and a DVD edition, and the DVD edition was more expensive.
Right.
So
yes,
we are openly like charging for the disc. And the disc is stuff other people made and didn't release for free.
What a grift. I love it.
Yeah. But then, like I say, often they were thrilled, especially because it's PC Gamer. So it's like a name people know. They were really excited to have that stuff. And I think actually I had some of my like Duke Nukem 3D levels put on a cover disc once. I remember that being a thrill for me. So got to return that favor.
Yeah. Awesome. So you're at PC Gamer now. How long? So after the disc, tell me sort of let's chart your journey through sort of PC Gamer and how long you were there for. Because I remember I was reading you when I started in games. I was reading you when you were a PC Gamer. Yep.
It must have been, so I left in 2013 and that was after 9 years. So it must have been 2004 that I joined. Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow, I think, was a new and forthcoming game, because I remember that was the first cover of the cover of the first issue I worked on. And the magazine had just been redesigned to add a new section called Extra Life, which was covering games after launch, covering mods and some indie stuff, I think, like freeware, and culture, like just here's like speedrunning and
or
machinima
or something.
and here's the crazy stuff people are doing with games, because that was happening, and it wasn't really being covered. And so I was part of that, and a big sort of believer in it. And it was funny. That was 2004, and it was funny watching like every 2 years since then, a different media outlet has gone through that exact kind of thing. We're going to cover games after launch, and all of them think they invented it. Like, everyone is like, no one's doing this. No one's covering anything after launch.
Why are we talking about this? Games can have a life cycle after it launches. Yeah,
there was probably like 5 people doing it before us, and we didn't know as well. Like, we all think we invented it.
We'll give it to you on the podcast. This is going on the record. Yeah.
But that eventually became my section once so I was a disc editor. I was writing stuff on the side. I kind of took that on as in addition to my job. I was working a little bit of extra time to do that. But I really wanted to be a writer. And so I remember my first review was a game called Dead Man's Hand. And it was like a first-person shooter set in the West. And it was actually quite good.
I remember Dead Man's Hand.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was given to me. I think it was like a budget game. And it was a review that was unimportant enough that you could give it to someone who'd never reviewed anything before. Obviously, it was going to be checked and edited, and it wouldn't go to press if it wasn't good, but or if it seemed like I wasn't being fair or anything. But I remember being really nervous because I wanted to give it, I think I gave it like 79%, which was quite high. And I think they weren't expecting it to get that kind of score. And I was like, I really do think it's actually like, it's really fun. I just had a great time with it. Being slightly apologetic about liking the game.
Okay. And so I'm interested now to sort of take a beat, because like we could talk about this later, but I actually want to cover it now. You spend a lot of your time at PC Gamer as a games critic, right? And now you're a game developer, and you famously made that transition. We'll talk about that. But at this time, how much do you think your role as a critic and the time that you spent sitting there and critiquing games and thinking about them critically has led to the skills that you have now as a game designer versus, I think there's something when people are games journalists and then they get into the games industry. I was a games journalist for a very, very short stint. Please don't look up anything that I wrote. It's terrible. Because I got into it to get into video games as well. It was sort of like a path through for me. But I remember like the first few months of being in games, I was like, oh my God, I knew fucking nothing about video games. Like once you're in there and you see how the sausage is made, you're like, especially back then we didn't have the exposure to like, the actual game making process that we do these days, right?
This is when you got into development?
When I got into development.
What were you doing?
I was at Taurus Games, which is like a third-party independent developer out. They actually just closed down recently, like last year, but they were around for like 35 years or something. One point, they were the most prolific independent developer in the world. Yeah, they would just pump out, and they were decently good as well, like these Game Boy Advance games and things, and every license under the sun. Like I pitched on everything from like Chuck E. Cheese to the Untouchables to like a bunch of different stuff. But I remember getting in there and like I was like assigned 3 games on my like first day as a designer. Basically, it was like madness in there, and yeah, just being like, oh my God, all of these things these ideas that I held about how easy games were to make or how they were hard in some ways and not in others, just like completely wrong,
Yeah.
And so going back to my question, as a critic in games, and then going into game development, how much of that actually transferred and assisted you, and how much of it getting into games were you like looking back on your days as a critic and thinking like, oh God, yeah, shit, I didn't really understand how the sausage was made? Or
yeah, I think it stood me in good stead on some levels because I'd spent so long analyzing why I did and didn't like things. So it wasn't so much that it that's not necessarily a golden ticket to making something that other people are going to like, but definitely a skill you do need is to being able to make something you like. That's like step one. Yeah. And it helps a lot in that if you have spent a lot of time thinking about why you like something. Like, obviously reviewing, you do that. And I was always very, conscientious about the analytical part of it. I really it was important to me to properly get to the heart of why something did or didn't work and explain that clearly to the reader. I think to a fault as a writer, because really like one of the most important jobs, the first most important job is to be fair. And the second most important thing is to be funny. And I wasn't that funny in reviews because there wasn't room for it. I needed to be fair. And if
too analytical, yeah.
And if I didn't like something, I think probably a lot of my reviews of things I didn't like were quite a downer to read because I'm just so pained about it. I'm so like, I want to like this, but it just doesn't work for this reason. And I get really into critiquing it and spend way more time on the flaws than I would on the positives, even if I'm giving it like 70%, which leads to that phenomenon where, people think the review range is 7 to 9.
Yeah.
And you can read some 70% reviews that are like 90% criticisms. It's so much easier to say what's wrong with something than it is to say what's right about it. It's really hard to express why something is good.
It's funny that you say that because when I was trying to get into games in this stint, when I was like just into games journalism and I was sort of knocking on some doors about getting into game development, there was a guy at a studio. He's a director of development in a studio called Tantalus, which is now a keyword studio in Australia. They've been around for many, many years. And I remember I had a phone conversation with him. And he said the exact same thing to me. He's like, I can't remember how he got onto it, but I just remember this soundbite where he was like, anyone can tell you why a game is bad, but a great game designer can tell you all the reasons why it's great. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. And I sort of zeroed in on that a bit in some of my PC Gamer work and also on my blog. I remember doing a post that was just like, this is literally called What Makes Games Good. It was just like, I'm just going to break it down. I think there's like 8 things. But also we did the top 100 every year at PC Gamer. So top 100 games, and we revise it every year. It used to be in the early days, we'd literally just go to the pub and argue about it for the whole afternoon. It was brilliant.
That's awesome. And someone would have like a piece of paper and like be moving them around. Yeah.
That was one of the times when it really was the dream job that I was imagining when I was at high school. That was great fun. And because I was always arguing for Deus Ex, whether Deus Ex came first or not, I would always be writing the entry for Deus Ex. And so every year I had to write a new piece about why Deus Ex is one of the best games ever. And my answer would change every year. I would sort of think about it more. I'd play it again and I get back to it and think, you know what? I think I was wrong before. Like, because my first thought was like, it's because you've got so many options, right? There's so many options and that's why it's cool. And then I thought about it. There are games with like way more options than that. And it doesn't matter in those games. It doesn't, it never comes through. And I think my second take at it was like, it's actually about like how those options collapse down. It's about how few options you have in certain situations. It's about when you get into this desperate spot, that's when the breadth of the options becomes important because now 90% of them are out of the question.
Yes.
You can't like, I remember being chased by a drone that just shot both my legs off. Or it shot one of my legs off and I think both of my arms. And I had to sort of like hobble up some stairs and I couldn't go back down the stairs. Drone can't follow me up the stairs. And I have a get gun, like a rocket launcher. But if I go into its field of view for even a second, it's going to instantly kill me. And I can get to a balcony above it. So I ended up hopping backwards off the balcony with my one remaining leg and firing the rocket launcher down onto it.
And there's
as I fall.
Gunpoint.
And blowing it up. And then my other leg breaks when I land.
Like, incredible.
Crawling across the ground. But like, I was so out of normal options that I had to use a crazy option. But you just keep on thinking about that. Keep on trying to dig deeper and trying to deeply understand what makes that game good. And the original idea for Gunpoint, the goal was, could I make like a 2D Deus Ex? What's the sort of simplest version of Deus Ex I could tinker around with myself, and can I make anything like that?
Okay, so let's sort of close off your PC gamer time. When did you start fantasizing about game development when you were there? So you're getting to your later years of PC game development. Surely it was like starting to work its way into your mind.
Yeah, I think visiting Valve was the start of it because obviously huge fan of the games, especially Half-Life 2. And I got to review the Orange Box, Portal and Team Fortress 2 and Episode 2, which is just unbelievable. Like all 3 of those are phenomenal.
Incredible, yeah.
And I met a bunch of people there I really liked. I loved talking with them about game design. I learned later that one of them, maybe I shouldn't name him, would always like semi-dredge my interviews because it would be like, oh God, it's Tom. We've got to really like, actually talk about this stuff now. Because he's going to want to know why there isn't a mini-map in Team Fortress 2. He's going to like, really need an answer for that.
Lest we get one of his 70% reviews with all the reasons why he wanted to like the game,
Yeah, and I think talking with those people at that level about that stuff, I love doing it. And I was deeply engaged with it. And Valve just seemed like a great place to work. It was just so like chill. It was just like, famously a lovely office with huge snack bars and just no overlords watching what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed like a really cool place to work. So there was this idea for me that, well, I'd love to work at Valve someday. That would be great. But game design was what interested me. I didn't really have any interest in becoming a programmer. And there weren't, I didn't see a lot of like entry level options there. Obviously, Valve don't have job titles, so but you do need to be able to do something.
Yes.
and specifically, you can't be a game designer at Valve if you're not also a programmer.
Yeah.
And so I started Gunpoint as a kind of audition project of like, I'll just see if I can I should just try making something. Spelunky had the original freeware version of Spelunky had come out, which was made in GameMaker, and that felt like the deletion of my last excuse to not try making a game, because GameMaker, just by its name, sounds like it's probably quite beginner friendly. Spelunky is one of the best games ever, and it was clear to me even then, and it felt like it succeeded largely because of its design. And it was like proof that if you are a really good designer, then the fact that you don't write C++ or whatever, if I could learn that tool, I would find out, am I a good designer? Like, can I do any of my ideas work in practice?
It sounds like the Derek Yu effect, which is like basically if you're thinking about becoming an indie game developer and you're within anywhere like the proximity of Derek Yu, it has to happen. It's like a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, well, he proved what you could do in GameMaker, and he also made his own tutorial for GameMaker. So,
right, awesome.
That was my first tutorial in learning it. So yeah, he really gives you a welcome wagon into game development.
Hell yeah! And so, tell me about that. Because I remember reading your blog, like as you were blogging about it and everything at the time, right? So, tell me about that process of.
That was a self-manipulative tactic to force me to finish it. Like, if I tell everyone I'm working on this, it's going to be so embarrassing if I don't finish it. So, because it was very much like that said, it didn't feel very pressuring because it was a spare time project. Nothing was riding on it. It wasn't. I wasn't trying. I wasn't even thinking I would sell it. It was just going to be a freeware thing. So I'm just making whatever I can make and just see how it goes.
Because when you started, was like Steam Greenlight around and stuff like that?
Yes.
So there was the beginnings of like indie digital distribution.
Not Greenlight.
But there were some indies on Steam already.
Yeah, because we actually, it was a great time to start in indie development for a lot of reasons. One is 2013 was a real good time to release the game. It was
one of 10 indie games releasing on Steam that year or something.
But the audience was like almost as big as it is today. So yeah, it was much easier to get attention. But also one of the great little thrills that the industry offered back then that it doesn't anymore is getting a Steam deal. It was like getting a record label deal as a musician. It was just like this magical email. If you got it, you've made it. Like that's it. And you're just sort of plucked from the ether by Valve noticing you and thinking your thing is cool. So at some point,
when you say just specifically for our listeners, when you say a Steam deal, you mean literally the permission and the approval to release on Steam.
Yeah, so like I said, this was just before Greenlight.
Yeah.
And so there was no flow for getting on it. It was just do Valve notice you? Like, what was the first one? Ragdoll Kung Fu was on there,
right,
and I think
Bithell was on there pretty early as well with Thomas Was Alone. I
remember. That was before Gunpoint, and I think Darwinia. I remember hassling Valve to put Darwinia on there. So you had no self-directed way of doing it. You just had to hope Valve noticed you, and they did. So that was super exciting. But yeah, working on that, I was teaching myself, following tutorials like Derek Yu's and other tutorials to just learn how to code, in some way. I'd done a little bit of programming in sixth form. There was a computing course that I did, and we worked in Visual Studio a little bit to make like a little Windows app. So I had like a little bit of experience with it,
and ASCII Duck as well.
Yeah, of course, ASCII Duck was fresh in my mind. And I think it fits quite well with my mindset. If there were no other programmers in the world, I would think, wow, I was born to program. This is exactly my kind of thing, because it's just logic. It's like pure logic, and that's the overlap between a lot of my interests.
And you had the math brain as well, you were saying already, right? Yeah.
And then you meet other programmers and you realize, like, oh, there are so many people who are so much further on that spectrum than I am.
Programming is one of those things. I love it. It's one of the things in game development that from the very start I loved is like how there's absolutely zero skill ceiling on infinite skill ceiling on like programming. Like you just, every year you meet a new one where you're like, what the fuck is happening in this person's brain? That's crazy.
And the thing I don't have is the like temperament for it. Like great programmers are just so calm.
Yes,
when something's not
absolutely,
working, they're like curious. Oh, that's weird. I thought that would have worked. I'm like, what the fuck? I just told you not to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Calm is amazing. I remember one of our old tech directors, Tom Johnson, who's absolutely incredibly talented programmer. He's at Rockstar and Criterion and a bunch of other places. I mean, then he decided to just come and make Armello with us. We were like ordained by this incredible programmer. And we'd be like, things would the room was probably literally on fire in some conversations. He's just like, it's fine. We'll figure it out. We did this on Lost Planet 3 or something or whatever, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I envy that now. And so, eventually I realized I was not a natural born programmer. and that journey of making Gunpoint, it was coming back to what you were saying about your first experience in game dev and not knowing anything.
Yeah.
It was such a reversal of just like things I thought would be so hard were so easy and things I thought would be so easy were so hard.
Yeah,
like,
it's not like you don't know anything. It's just that like you had the map up the wrong way or something like that, right?
I remember like trying to figure out how to do a laser sight. Like you aim a gun in Gunpoint and it has a laser sight to show where you're aiming. And I was like, so I need to draw a line, but as soon as it hits something solid, it should stop. I can't think of any I don't know like the smart maths of doing that. The only thing I can think of is like, you check every pixel for collision along the way.
Correct.
And I dismissed that as like, no, you can't do that. And then I tried it because it's simple code-wise and was like, oh, this runs fine. There's no performance impact from this whatsoever because you're just making such a tiny, simple thing. Like as long ago as it was, computers are pretty good. They were like, I think Crysis was out. Like, the little laser sight in Gunpoint is not going to
surely
tax.
I can't run it on every pixel. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know anything worked like that. I didn't know anything was done the sort of brute force way. And of course, in an actual game where performance is important, you don't do things that way. But as a little 2D platformer, you can do whatever you like. Like it's not the same.
You're fine.
Same with
And you were working in Game Maker, obviously. Then. Yeah, cool.
Same with one of Gunpoint's like main features that did come from my games journalism like frustrations of playing games and losing loads of progress, having to repeat myself. I was like, if I want to make a game, I just want to see what it's like if the game saves every 2 seconds, like literally every 2 seconds. And in Game Maker at that time, this isn't true anymore, but in that version of Game Maker, to save the game, you just wrote game_save brackets, and then it just saves the game and game load. And making a system it was actually a little bit difficult. Just conceptually to figure out how to save because you want to keep like 3 or 4 save games. But of course, when you load an old one, now its record of what the most recent ones are is what it was at the time.
Yes.
And so you can kind of get in a muddle where things don't line up anymore.
It's just like recursive the whole way down.
Yeah, because the fact it's built in was super easy, but it meant you didn't have any choice over what was saved and what was loaded. Everything is. So if you wanted the game to have any knowledge that it even just loaded a save game, you had to like store a file somewhere else for it to look at and realize that had happened. But the great thing about it was it took no time at all. So, there was no performance impact, but no noticeable performance impact from it doing that. And so you can just save I think we ended up with like 3 seconds or maybe 5 seconds. My theory proved true, which is it just removes frustration. Now the game is not frustrating. Awesome. And you can have one-shot kills and really sudden deaths, and it's usually more funny than frustrating because you haven't lost anything. It's just like, oh my god, I just got
completely gunned down 5 seconds earlier.
Yeah. So that was really satisfying. Was having all these like long-standing things. Why don't games do that? Could you just do this? Could you just do that? And then getting to try those things and being like, in some cases, yeah.
You're like, I was right, actually. Yeah, they should have had that 10 years ago when I was complaining about it.
It's obviously a different kind of game. Like, I don't know if it would work for like an action game to completely remove frustration because it also removes challenge, right? If you had a game where just success was based around, can I, juke and jive and duck between people's bullets and stuff, just endlessly reloading your save game from 3 seconds ago until that happens, it's not going to be fun. But in a sort of puzzle game, it makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. So you mentioned challenge, so I'm going to skip ahead and we can like overlook the 3 of your games here because especially in Tactical Breach Wizards, like you were lauded for like the way that you've approached challenge there. Like it's actually at the core of the game is this, similar to Gunpoint, like this ability to just rewind, right? So I'd love to sort of hear while we're talking about, testing philosophies and, gripes from your critiquing days, this kind of idea of, because it's not like Tactical Breach Wizards isn't challenging, right? It's beautifully mentally challenging in many ways. But it's like you even give people the opportunity to just skip a level, right? It's like, let's just skip this room. I don't want to do this one or I'm banging my head against it. Let's talk a little bit about your philosophies around challenge and how it led to, you've just spoken about how you got to that decision in Gunpoint, just testing and playing around. But how did that inform sort of moving forward and how did you arrive at the decision for Tactical Breach Wizards to actually like make it a core part of the game, essentially.
Yeah. I think I've always felt the challenge is wildly overrated. Like, obviously, there are players who need it and love it and want it, and they want to be punished and they want to be frustrated. There are generally people who enjoy being frustrated.
Yeah.
And I do not at all. No.
Well, you're already programming the game, so that's you've got that already sorted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm very easily frustrated. I'm extremely impatient. I now know that I have some form of ADHD. I didn't know that at the time. Okay, right, when I'm being made to wait or repeat myself, I'm so not anxious, but like antsy, I guess. I'm just so irritated. I'm just like, come on, get on with it. My catchphrase at PC Gamer that people start to know me for was, "Oh, come on!" Because you have to play stuff in the office, and I just couldn't contain my frustration sometimes. Yeah. So I'm just never a very challenge-focused player. I don't care. I think there might even be a bit of a cultural difference between the UK and US. This is a bit of a silly pet theory, but I noticed that in America, people talk about beating games, and in the UK, people talk about completing games.
Yes,
and the beating part was so alien to me when I first heard it, like beating the game.
Yeah. And
I realized there's a certain kind of player for whom that is what games are. It's like each one is a challenge, and you've got to beat it. Did you beat it? That's all that matters. Did you beat the challenge? And that was just never how I saw them. Like going back to like Ultima Underworld, discovering that as a world, that's beating Ultima Underworld is like, who cares? Like
you're more so moving through it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a place to explore, and it's about exploring possibilities. And yeah, especially as I got into, emergent games and stuff like Deus Ex, where it's the breadth of possibilities and the how you're pushed to explore them is the fascinating thing. That's, again, it's a very challenging game, but you can save and load any time. As long as you remember to save, in theory, there's no frustration there, and there's no kind of brick wall of difficulty. You could just sort of save, load, spam your way through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, challenge has never been that important to me, but frustration was extremely important to me in a negative way. And so all three of our games have something in there that sort of is meant to be like a hard solve for frustration. So yeah, Gunpoint saves all the time. Heat Signature, because it was a roguelike, I did actually try save and load, just letting you do it the same way as you did in Gunpoint. And I even tested it with players. There was two possible solutions. One was just let you save load and just see if that works. And the other one was, because I still wanted you to die in one hit. Like both those games have no health for anyone, you or the enemies. And that obviously can be very frustrating. But the two solutions were either save load, or when you're shot, the enemies come and pick up your body, then they throw you into space, and then you can, while floating through the space and bleeding, you can remote control your ship to come and pick you up. So it's like a little mini game to recover. Which, now that I say it, is absurdly complicated. Like, I can't believe I just like, I'm not sure I'm going with a solution, but let's just program it quickly. And yeah. Because at that time, I think I was the only programmer on Heat Signature. I did eventually hire John Winder, who's our programmer now. But I think at that time it was just me. And I built both systems and just asked people, which one do you prefer? And everyone preferred the catching yourself thing. Yeah. So I was like, okay, cool, let's go with that. Saves us a lot of technical issues with saving and loading.
Like, thank God. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
But I mean, also it's quite complicated AI wise and stuff. I do remember there were a lot of issues we had to fix with like people trying to pick up. If the enemy can't path to your body, then you just die, because like the only way you can get saved is them kicking you out. It also makes like no narrative sense that you boarded their ship, they shot you, and then you're bleeding out. And I think in my head, like, they assume you're dead and they're just taking out the trash. They're just like, well, and fair enough. Someone is shot and then you throw them out the airlock. You don't expect them to survive that process.
You don't expect them to come back like again. Yeah.
But the fact that when you do come back and then you do it again and they shoot you again, the second time they would definitely like double tap you, right?
Yeah, you'd make sure at that point. Yeah.
But they don't. But yeah, it's forgiving. Heat Signature is definitely probably our most frustrating game, or has the most potential for frustration. I think a lot of people get it and treat it the way I do, where like you don't care that much if you get shot a few times and have to do it. But especially because the recovery game is about flying a spaceship, and that's a different skill set to sneaking around the spaceships inside. That it can definitely be a problem for people. So that was our least extreme solution to frustration. But I think it was probably the right one given that game, because it is a roguelike. I think true save and load probably would have had a bunch of game design problems that we didn't have to hit, because we never went too far down that path.
And so when before we jump on into Tactical Breach, when you got to Tactical Breach, did you feel the degree of frustration in Heat Signature was more than you had hoped for? Like, Or you were kind of like fine with it because it's a roguelike. That's what comes with it. And now we're tackling something else.
Yeah, Breach Wizard's system wasn't a response to heat signatures thing, but I remember getting some feedback. When we do feedback, we get like at least 1,000 testers per wave, sometimes 2,000, and we'll do like 4 or 5 waves for each game. So in total, we get a lot of responses. And so mostly I'm looking at the aggregate things of like trying to flag up. I like numerical responses where I can just see how many people had this kind of problem and how many people died on this level and stuff like that. But for the written responses, I do read them and look up ones that, like, when I'm trying to understand what the problem is. We know about the problem because of some survey results.
Because of the quantitative, now you're looking for the qualitative.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, you use the quantitative to sort of guide what you need to focus on, and the written stuff to understand better. And I remember reading somebody like who was genuinely like furious at me because, and it wasn't just the frustration. It was they got stranded in space, which, like, I think it's if your pod is destroyed and you've been kicked out of an airlock, there's really not much you can do. But you can, if you have a gun, you can like fire a gun to propel yourself a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
But the velocities you're going at, it's pretty long shot to ever get back to civilization that way. And there's a few messages that start to come up as that happens because I can't remember why you're not dying at this point, because you do run out of oxygen eventually. But there's a bunch of messages. There's some situation where you could just get stuck forever. So there's some messages saying, unless this is part of some clever plan, you might need to just like
restart,
start a new character. And they're a little bit jokey, and there's a sequence of them. And somebody I think they'd hit some kind of bug or something they didn't understand, where their pod had been destroyed sort of in a way that didn't feel like their fault. And so they're very frustrated because they're going to lose this character. Like, that is a permadeath. Unlike just getting shot and bleeding out a little bit, you have lost that character, and you could have played that character for like 8 hours or something. That's pretty rare, but it could happen. And so they were going through this very frustrating experience, and then they had me like joking at them.
How stupid are you?
Yeah, they read it as like making fun of them. That message was genuine in that it might be part of a clever plan. Like, I can't tell from the code what you're doing. Like, you might be doing something wild. So I don't want to say just restart. I have to allow for the possibility you might have a plan. But then, it is in a jokey tone, and they were so mad at me. And it's like, I don't need that person to specifically to like us, but it does clue you into player psychology of like, you've got to be pretty careful with this. Like that if there are situations where the player is suffering not through no fault of their own, you've got to do everything you can to help them. And that's, you're asking earlier about tactical breach was letting you skip levels. That's part of that philosophy as well, of just like, there's no good reason. Like, if you're truly stuck on something and you're not enjoying it, there's no reason to force you to finish it. There's no I'm not under some mandate to ensure you see every atom of content we made. Like, if this isn't working for you, there's so many ways that can happen. And that probably comes from game reviewing as well, where like, you have to finish this game. And it might be a game that's really fucking frustrating. And sometimes you're playing pre-release code that like no one's played this version, or they haven't tested it well enough, and you're just stuck on this thing. And it's so annoying when you're just like, I just can't play the rest of the game because I cannot do this thing.
You're kind of, I guess you're like rewriting the trauma, or like narrative and the trauma of like young Tom in the PC gamer office being like, come on, stuck on some game.
But it just brings it into crystal clear focus of like, this is stupid. Why are you stopping somebody? Imagine a book where like, if you can't get past this page, you can't read the rest of it. It's like, let's not mandate that. Like, sure, we want people to play all of it, but if you're stuck, then just skip it. Gunpoint let you skip up to 2 levels. And I think, I don't know why I didn't just make that unlimited. I think I wanted some sense. I didn't want people to just sort of browse the whole game like a sort of collection of levels. I wanted them to realize that it's a narrative, but actually I think it would have been fine to just people understand what a game is. They know they're supposed to play all of the levels.
Yeah, they bought it to play it, right? Like, we need to just trust them with that.
And then there's stuff like, losing your save games, or I'm playing on someone else's computer or something, and I don't have my saves here. Like, the fact that now I just can't get back to where I was is another kind of pointless frustration. There just doesn't seem to be any need for that. We can just let people skip around as much as they like.
Yeah. So let's get back to, was there anything else that you wanted to say on Tactical Breach Wizards about challenge or your intentionality there when you approached it?
Yeah, so the actual like rewind thing came from XCOM and into the Breach. The start of Breach Wizards was playing a lot of XCOM, and loving it, but getting so invested. It's so good at making you care about your people, and it's such an exciting game, but it's extremely high stakes and low clarity. It's really unclear. Like, if I move over here, can I hack the computer from there?
Yeah.
I don't know till I move. Once I move, it's too late.
Yes,
Now, if I'm wrong and that person's out in the open, and if they hack the computer, it would end the mission and get them out of danger. If they can't hack the computer, they just die. And that's like a character that I'm invested in with like 8 hours. So I really wanted to eliminate all of those problems. Just like anything that's about, basically there should be no surprises on your turn. Obviously in XCOM, there's chance to hit. So they have to allow surprises on your turn. But I didn't want to do that anyway. So in a game where you do have perfect information, like Into the Breach, Into the Breach does a great job of previewing everything that's going to happen. Its interface is, as good as you can possibly do a job of telling the player what's going to happen. But it still falls down sometimes. Sometimes they're showing me the information, but I'm just not seeing it because it's overlapping in some way, or I'm really not expecting the information they're telling me, so I just don't register the UI thing. And so I do something on my turn that just doesn't work out the way I thought it did. And they give you 1 undo per mission, but it was never enough. I was always hitting things, and it's just like, anytime an interaction that I triggered doesn't work out the way I expect it to, in a game with perfect information, it's kind of the game's fault. Like, it's not actually the game's fault in terms of the game is doing its best, but it's never a good thing. Like, it's always, if you can fix that, let's fix it. So my idea for Breach Wizards was initially that the way to do a preview UI was just to kind of have a ghost of your character go out and actually do the thing and just sort of show all the consequences of it. And I don't know why I thought it needed to be ghosts. Because in retrospect, it's really obvious that just have them actually do it, then rewind. Because showing 2 copies of everything is obviously incredibly.
But I think there's like some video game convention maybe working its way into there from the past. So, like, because honestly, that's how I probably would approach it. I would have gone through the same cycle. Yeah.
I think I had some image. It might even exist in a game where, like, you sort of see a ghost go out and do the thing over and over again. Yeah. So if you're planning to, like, I think at that time also I was thinking about simultaneous execution. Yeah. So I was you would sort of plan everybody's turn, but none of it had happened yet. And you'd be seeing these ghosts going out and doing these things. And if you're knocking someone in front of a window, someone else is punting them out the window. Yes. You'd just be seeing that interaction happen over and over again. Yep. And that could be quite cool, because when you set up a satisfying interaction, seeing it constantly trigger and just think, oh, this is going to be sweet. When I finally trigger this, this is going to be so good. There's potential there. But simultaneous execution turned out to be just a real pain in the ass. Lots of like niggly edge cases, and just like it's going to come down to like race conditions and all these like really fine-grained things. Yeah. And I wanted something cleaner cut than that. And there was a period of experimentation where I was trying. I think the 2 semi-novel things I was interested in were simultaneous execution and free rewinds. Do these things work? And the answer was free rewinds, yes. Simultaneous execution, no.
Yeah, okay, great.
And mess around. I also tried the interleaved turns idea, which is what XCOM Chimera Squad eventually did.
I did play that. What do you mean by interleaved turns?
So you're all every unit in the battlefield is in a queue.
Yes.
It's going to be, Trent's turn, then it's going to be Alien 1's turn, then it's going to be Tom's turn, and then it's going to be Alien 2's turn. And I found that it was so much UI, like that, you just can't show that on the map. It has to be a UI element that just takes up a ton of screen space, and that's where the game is happening, really. So you're spending all your time looking at that. Yeah. And then in Chimera Squad, I do like it, but I found it really hamstrung my ability to have my units cooperate, because if I want person A to set up person B, I'm just purely at the mercy of the turn order. It's like if person B goes before 2 aliens act in between us, it's just not going to work. So you just can't set that stuff up. And
essentially initiative, you've got initiative then in your game, right? And it becomes like a core part of the experience, like a BG3 or something like that.
Yeah. And in those games too, I kind of find the same thing of like, there's much less scope to like have my team cooperate and set each other up for success, because there is this uncertainty between them, and because I didn't decide what order they go in. And so Breach Wizards is like the extreme other end of the spectrum, where total freedom over the order of execution, total freedom over the order of actions. Like even so XCOM and Into the Breach, you have to move then shoot. As soon as you shoot, your turn's over basically. And I didn't see a reason for that, so I just didn't do it. It's just like, no, I think we'll just let you shoot then move if you like. I do in XCOM, they have a sort of economy between actions and movement. So if you're not going to act, you can move twice as far, which just doesn't matter in Into the Breach or Wizards, because our levels are so small. So both of us just chose to have like move as a separate thing to actions. And I just didn't see a reason to not allow you to shoot then move, and so you can do everything in every order. And as you'll know, having played it, the further you get into the game, the more different abilities every wizard has.
Yeah.
Eventually, you have 5 wizards, each of whom has like 6 abilities.
Yeah.
A lot of which are just free. Like they might cost a mana, or there might be 1 use per turn, or 2 uses per level, but otherwise free. So you can do that, and you can act, and you can do, like each wizard can be doing like 5 or 6 things in any order they like, and also halfway through their turn, you can switch to a different wizard and have them do something else.
Yeah.
So it's just like maximum flexibility, maximum options, because the thing I'm always interested in is letting the player come up with a clever plan and pull off something really like pleasing of their own design. I want them to invent their own solution and to feel like it was their idea and have like authorship over that. And the more room I can give you toolset wise to do that, the better. And then rewinds is like a real like cornerstone of that. That's it just gives you so much more freedom to experiment with that stuff. If that was inspired by Heat Signature's level of forgiveness / punishment, was I did hear from people who don't click with Heat Signature, because they were so scared of losing their character, because the stakes were so high, they didn't feel like they wanted to try anything fancy. They're just like, I better just shoot the guys. I better just do the obvious thing. Because I'm just not, this teleporter might do something cool, but I just don't want to risk it. And I was like, oh God, let's remove that completely. I don't know what you're thinking about that at all. Because and that, basically the way I play Heat Signature, and a lot of people who do click with it kind of play it as if it has no stakes. Like as a developer, I don't give a shit about my progress. Like losing progress means nothing to you as a developer, right? Because often you want to lose your progress. It's annoying that I have saved data here. I need like a fresh start. So progress just becomes this completely meaningless thing. So I play Heat Signature like a lunatic. I'm just always doing the craziest, highest risk strategies. Like, I wonder if I can just throw my shotgun at that guy. Like, what would happen if I blew up this fuel tank and then like teleported into it and then out of it again?
And then the beauty of you understanding and experimenting with all of that stuff, and then hearing that your players or a contingent of them are not experiencing that because of some other behavior that you've engendered through the game's like mechanics is it's tough. So that was part of wanting to take a pretty extreme approach with it in Breach Wizards, just like fully rewind. The thing that opened up Heat Signature in a big way was like pause. I'm not sure what the term for it is, like real time with pause, where when you pause the game, you can still control things. You have all the time in the world to like move the camera around, change what weapon you selected, basically queue up an action, sort of. You can, if I'm currently in the middle of firing my shotgun at somebody, I can still pause the game, go and select my sword, and then choose to throw it at the guy behind me, and then unpause and make that happen. Pause.
Yeah. And that just, again, with emergent gameplay, just exploded how much of that was available to the player. Because again, I was doing some wacky stuff with mostly real time. But
humble brag. I don't need the active pause, but we'll put it in there for the gamers.
Because I didn't care.
Of course,
I was liberated by just not giving a shit about my characters or having any investment in what I'm doing. And
did you see when you got the active pause in? Did you see? I imagine there are players that like do the crazy shit, but completely in the safety net of the active pause. Right, they're pausing at every moment, but they're still doing all this crazy stuff. Is that a kind of play style that you saw?
Yeah, I haven't. In our testing, we didn't really see that a ton because we did mostly remote testing. When I took it to shows, it was earlier in the process and people were playing it for the first time, so they don't get into it that much. That's kind of the state I want people to be in, is like doing all that stuff. But then on YouTube later, after release, I did see some great stuff like that. Like a 12-minute video of someone's mission that in real time takes 10 seconds. They go through this incredibly like complex ship with a huge inventory of different items, and they're just like 99% of the time is spent paused.
That's awesome.
That's precisely controlling.
That's how I play.
Yeah.
I actually want to hit pause here. Hit pause here for a second, and I'm sorry to do this to you, but like I want to make sure our listeners have a context, because there's 3 games really, right, in your like catalog. And let's just kind of do like a quick elevator pitch for each one so that they understand what we're talking about. So it started, you released Gunpoint, then you released Heat Signature, and obviously most recently, late last year?
Yeah,
right? Yep.
August.
Yep. Tactical Breach Wizards. Tell our listeners what each game is.
Okay, so Gunpoint is a puzzle.
It's been a while since
I was going to say puzzle tactics game. It's not a tactics game. Gunpoint is a stealth puzzle game where you break into buildings by rewiring the electronics. So you have a device called the Crosslink, which lets you see how every electronic device is wired up, and then you can just drag those connections around. So you can drag like a light switch to a trapdoor instead of a light, and now when the guard flicks the light switch, they're going to fall through the trapdoor. And you are a freelance spy who is framed for a murder, and you are taking jobs from clients, both to make money and also to try and squirm your way out of this murder case that you've got yourself embroiled in. Heat Signature is a top-down space stealth roguelike where you break into enemy spaceships. So you fly around in a tiny little pod and you dock with the airlock of an enemy spaceship, then sneak inside and try and beat up the crew, steal their key cards, take over the whole ship, assassinate people. It's an entirely procedurally generated galaxy. All the ships are procedurally generated. And they're also modularly destroyable, so you can blow bits off of them. And you take missions, to assassinate, to steal, to rescue aboard those ships.
So cool.
And then Tactical Breach Wizards is a turn-based tactics game about wizards in Kevlar who are unraveling a global conspiracy. And the combat is in very small tactical encounters, breach and clear style, and you have infinite rewind to keep trying every possibility, combining your wizard spells in clever ways to solve those combat situations.
Amazing. Very, very well done. And okay, great. So now that like listeners who may not be familiar with Tom's games, we have some. So when we talk about Gunpoint, Heat Signature, and Tactical Breach Wizards, hopefully you can sort of follow along a little bit better. So let's actually go back to great conversation about challenge. I got some other questions if we get to them when we dive more into Tactical Breach there. But let's just go back and close out the Gunpoint thing, because I know when that launched, it was kind of like a life-changing moment for you, right? Like launching an indie game at that time, and obviously it was successful as well, and it's now catapulted you onto this course that you're on now. Tell me about closing it. Let's talk about closing out your first indie game and then sort of launching it, and how that did sort of change things for you. And what was it like? Yeah,
it was coming up towards launch, because all my friends were games journalists. They were all telling me, this is going to do great. Like they were all super confident about it. And I was like, shut up. Thank you. But like, I can't think that way. You have to assume that it's going nowhere. And I don't want to get in a situation where like only success is acceptable. Like anything else would be disappointment. And I didn't, I just had no idea how well it would do. I also had not really any frame of reference for what sales would mean, because what you sell in your first day, what does that mean for your first year? What does it mean for your first month? So my friend Mike Bithell was nice enough to share his like full stats for Thomas Was Alone.
Right.
So I could look at those relationships of like, what does your first hour mean for your first day? What does your first day mean for your first week? We had a bit of a weird thing because we actually did pre-orders for Gunpoint like a week before launch. We released a demo and opened pre-orders. I don't remember why.
That's so strange for that point in time.
I did pre-orders specifically.
It's from your days as a disc editor. That's why.
Demos. I was really insistent on doing a demo because the game was originally going to be free, and I let people persuade me to charge money for it, which was very good advice.
Thank you to those people. Yeah.
Thank you. Shout out to Graham Smith, who is my friend, who was like, "You've got to charge money for this, mate." I also asked on my blog because I felt bad about it. I was like, I said this was going to be free, and now I'm saying it's not. But I asked people, should I charge money for that? And just everybody said yes.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, great.
So it wasn't too hard a decision, but because of that, I felt like there's got to be a free version at least. Yeah, right. And Val said, no, don't do a demo. And I was like, are you telling me I can't do a demo, or are you just advising me not to do a demo? Because I want to do a demo.
Yeah.
And they let me do it. But back then they were like, no, don't do demos. They're a bad idea. Now, of course, like Next Fest, it's like a huge on demos. Everyone should do demos. Of course you do demos.
Steam is an empire built on demos now.
Yeah. So I don't know what changed on their end in terms of like, were they seeing numbers that changed or what? But anyway, it worked out well for us. And we also did like, this was the age of like Kickstarter was new and doing crazy things with games. Like games were making millions of dollars on Kickstarter. And my analysis of like one of the things that was going right there was the tiers where people who are super excited about the thing can pay way more and get some extra stuff. And it was not so much about selling that extra stuff as like a value proposition. It was more about when people are huge fans of something and have a bunch of disposable income, they're excited to support it. They like, and so we offered three editions of Gunpoint. There was an exclusive edition was $30, a special edition was $20, and the normal edition was $10.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought this would do a great job of like capturing, that Kickstarter thing and letting people support it if they wanted to. Because it is, I don't think I banged this drum particularly hard, but it would be true to say that how well that game did was going to determine whether I make more games. Like,
yeah,
that
of course, yeah.
I mean, that's true of every game, I guess.
I actually remember reading your blog post after it went live, and there was something that you said. It was along the lines of like, now I can make games for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And that first week when it was pre-orders, I was also asking people to buy it on Humble. I think that was the non-Steam storefront we were selling it through, because we got a bigger percentage from there.
Yeah.
I was dumb enough to think that was better for us. And so I was like, everyone, please buy on Humble, because more of your money gets to us. And for that first week, most of our revenue came from the exclusive edition, the $30 one.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Because those people were, long-time fans and people super excited about it. They're going to pre-order and get the top tier. And then the moment it launched on Steam, also most of our revenue was from Humble in that pre-order period as well. And then, the moment it launched on Steam, like 95% of our revenue was on Steam and from the basic edition.
In hour one, yeah.
Yeah. And also, I can't remember if it was shortly after or much later that I discovered that you should definitely push people to buy on Steam, because you want to be bubbling up in the Steam algorithm. The placement there is what's really going to determine success. So yeah, that was a wild ride. So, that first week before it was fully out, that was already wildly exciting. So people are buying this $30 edition of this game. This is wild. And I didn't know what it meant yet, but it did look really encouraging. Mm-hmm. And then, the actual Steam launch just blew past like every possible projection. It was just like incredible. Just looked like I would be able to do this as a full-time job. And I actually, when I finished the game, it was by taking a sabbatical from PC Gamer. I've been doing the whole thing in my weekends until then. And then as it came time to like close it out, I was like, I do need to focus on this if I possibly can. And so I got a sabbatical from work, which meant 3 months off. With normally a sabbatical, like you're entitled to a job of at least the same kind of level as the one you used to have. But because it was PC Gamer, I really wanted that exact job back. So I checked with my boss's boss, like, if I do this, I can get my job back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, fine. But also, he was also very confident in me and was like, you're not coming back.
That's why you just said it. He's like, sure, Tom, you can have it back. Yeah.
And incredibly, this is the first and only time it's ever happened in my career. I did finish it in those 3 months, and actually less than those 3 months. And I launched it, I think, 2 weeks before the end of that, so that I had the 2-week notice period. I could give my notice like the moment it launched, basically, after like a day of sales. Like, okay, I can give my notice now. I think I'm good. And technically I was supposed to go back for 1 day after the sabbatical. Like my 2-week notice was slightly late on that. But
did you go for the victory lap? And
I didn't work a day. I was thinking about it for a while. Maybe I just show up at the office. And I just like, what do you want me to do today? But I did go into the office, I think, on that day and say goodbye to people.
Right.
And then there was this weird feeling of like, super excited. But then now I'm a game developer and I work from home alone.
Yeah.
And there is no structure to anything else. Like from now on, every single thing in my whole career is self-directed. Nothing will happen unless I make it happen. And every day is potentially going to be the same. There's no short-term goals. At PC Gamer, it's a monthly deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Like 4 weekly, actually. We would do 13 issues a year. And that's such a good structure. Like, it's stressful at times. I mean, every month there's a stressful deadline, but it just gives your life structure. Like, there is always a thing you're working towards, then you achieve it, and then it comes out. And you get the copies of the magazine in like a couple of weeks later, and you look through what you made, and it's this beautiful finished thing, and you're proud of it. And then game development is like 3 years is the fastest I've ever made a game.
God. Yeah. Tell me about it. Okay. And so then let's talk a bit about, because I am keen to get to Tactical Breach Wizards, but like, if you could look at Heat Signature and sort of how you sort of stumbled upon that idea or how you bridged to the next thing, how did that get up and going? Did you take some time off? Did you
because during making Gunpoint, it wasn't too taxing to do it on top of a full-time job for some reason. I think I was just in that phase of my life where like I didn't need spare time. I didn't need, and because there was no pressure on it for most of that development time, it was just like, if I felt like it on a weekend, I'd work on it.
Mm-hmm.
But then the thing that was slightly stressing me out was I couldn't go to any conferences. Like there's always things happening where people are showing off their games and I couldn't do any of them because I can't take time off work and spend it, showing this game. The only exception was we were nominated for the design award in the IGF.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that, you go and you show your game at the actual booth. And so I took time off work to go to GDC. It's a very weird thing where I'm press, but I have to take time off work to go to the Game Developers Conference where there will be PC Gamer people there covering it. And I had a great badge because I was press. I was also a speaker and an exhibitor and a finalist.
You got a stack of ribbons hanging down the bottom of it.
Yeah, it's just every possible role I have to. But yeah, that was the only one I got to go to. And so after it came out and I had this money and this freedom, and for that rest of that year, I just went to everything. We'd already entered every possible, showcase and awards.
Which was big at the time then for indies as well. I remember the award circuit was a huge element of that success story.
Yeah. And I guess we were nominated for a bunch of them. And some things I just went to for fun. And that was great. But I remember being... it was really great for meeting people. So many people I sort of already knew a little bit became friends that year because I finally got to actually meet up with them and hang out with them. But I remember sort of towards the end of that year feeling the creative itch of I haven't made anything in a long time, and I'm really antsy about it now. And Heat Signature was not the first thing that I tried. I basically had two projects going on at the same time for a while. The other one was codenamed GHGC, which stood for Grappling Hooks and Glass Cutters. And it was a side-on stealth game like Gunpoint, but I was making it in Unity, so it was sort of 3D levels, but 2D gameplay. And the idea of that was that you'd have a team of people all breaking into buildings, and grappling hooks would be one of the core mechanics, so you'd be swinging each other around on the end of these grappling hooks. I watched a movie called, I think it's just called The Thieves, which is a heist movie about a team of specialists, and there's a grappling hook guy in it, and there's a safecracker, and there's everyone just has this one real specific role, and them swinging around skyscrapers and stuff on grappling hooks looks so fucking cool. And yeah, heists that are like a team of specialists is a real fantasy for me. So I was excited to do that, and the idea of that was going to be my first idea for it was that you would play each character's actions, then rewind and play a different character's actions. So you'd be sort of cooperating with yourself, which is
sounds familiar.
There are 5 games that work that way. There's a world in Braid that works that way, right? You're cooperating with your past self. There are tons of little indie games where that's the whole concept of the indie game. Quadrilateral Cowboy did it, and that was a heist game as well. So there's a ton of overlap. I remember talking to Brendan about that and realizing we were both planning the same thing. I was like, fuck. But he did warn me how incredibly difficult it had been.
Yep.
And then I think at some point that graduated into I think pause and play would work for that. I think you can just pause and give everyone orders and then unpause, and the whole playing it out and rewinding creates a lot of weird situations. And feels a bit of a laborious way to do it. But yeah, that was I think the idea I was more excited about. And then Heat Signature came from back in my journalist days. I had interviewed Derek Yu about Spelunky, and one of the questions I asked him was, could a game like this ever work in 3D? Could you generate 3D levels like this? His answer is really funny because he said something like, well, I think in 3D, the blockiness of it would just be sort of unacceptable level of fidelity, in a 2D game. I don't think I'll ever be a 3D randomly generated blocky game. I just couldn't work.
Just can't say it could never work.
But his answer got me thinking about what could you do in 3D that would be generatable? And I thought of spaceships, and it gave me an idea for a 3D game where you would break into spaceships they would be sort of I guess Minecrafty blocky things, but you could punch through the hull and then board the spaceship and beat everyone up. And I was never really going to make it. It was just a daydream kind of idea. But after Gunpoint, I realized actually, I think it was my friend Graham Smith mentioned it to me. I was just I still think about that idea you had about breaking into spaceships. And I thought, you know what? I could do that in 2D. At Gunpoint was me trying to do Deus Ex in 2D, and then Heat Signature was me trying to do one of my own previous ideas in 2D.
Right.
And yeah, I thought, I think I know enough to do that. I think spaceships floating through, and the idea of this object that's floating through space is also a level you can stand on and walk around. It is a bit of tech that needed solving. I learned much later that if I'd done it in Unity, that would have been trivially already solved for me. I didn't know that. I had to make my own coordinate system. Heat signature works on, there's X, Y, and there's fore and starboard. You have like ship-wise coordinates as well as global coordinates.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had to redo that system obviously several times because my first one was like radial, I think. It was like your ship-wise coordinates for some reason were done as an angle and a distance from the center of the ship. I don't know why I did that, but you got glitchy stuff the further you got away from the center. So that was obviously stupid. And I was quite testing driven on that. I brought both games to, I think Indiecade New York. Maybe it's called Indiecade East. And just had people play both of them, just tell me which one they preferred. And people preferred heat signature, not dramatically, but there was a significant bias towards that. And then I also showed them both. I did little devlogs of each one, and there was a way bigger response to heat signature even before I showed that you could go inside the spaceships.
Oh, right.
And I was like, oh boy, you guys haven't seen anything yet. So yeah, it was just the more popular idea. And then once I did focus on it, I got more excited about it as well. And I started to see this as like, actually, yeah, this is the one I'm more excited about because I see the potential of it. But it was the toughest development process, I think, of all three, because it kept showing potential and it didn't click together.
Didn't
like
deliver on that potential, Yeah,
Gunpoint just told me what it wanted to be. Like I set out to make a 2D Deus Ex, and once I came up with that hacking mechanic, it was so obvious that was the basis of a puzzle game. Like that is here's a really flexible system that's kind of too flexible, really. If you make a Deus Ex game like that, you have too much power with the crosslink, you just solve everything that way. So it needs to be constrained, and as soon as you constrain it, it becomes puzzly. And so it just becomes a puzzle game, and every level, design the puzzle by how you lay out the electronics, and that it merges really well.
They really do write themselves, some games, right, as a designer. Yeah.
Definitely direct themselves. Like it just told me what the focus should be. And I expected that to happen with heat signature, and it just never did. Just like at every juncture, it's like, well, you could make the space side of this way more intricate and better simulated. You could make the space stations, these big sort of like shopping mall kind of experiences. You could make the onboard experience a much deeper and more engrossing stealth experience. You could make it more of a combat experience. You could make it more of a strategic thing about how you take down different sectors. You could also make ship-to-ship combat a bigger part of it. Like everything could be expanded in every direction.
And that's also, you're also describing things that different player types would want as well. So then when you're asking for feedback, people are like, I want ship combat, or I want this. And so it's even hard to go to your players in those moments and be like, what should this be?
Yeah. And the main thing people asked for in feedback was like more context for what they're doing. Because early on, there was no galaxy map. There was just, it was always somewhat zoomed in. And so you spawn, you get given a mission, you go board a ship, and there was no context for it. And that was one of the many things on my list of things that I could add was like a galaxy map, and there's space stations that you liberate and all of that. And so I thought, great, that's what people want. I'll work on that. But my idea for it was pretty, heavy-handed. Of like, I'm going to generate an entire galaxy, and then aboard these space stations, there'll be a missions board, and then the missions that you do will break or form trade routes between the space stations. So when you fully zoom out in heat signature, it looks like you're seeing constellations, like stars connected by lines, but they're actually space stations, and the lines are sort of trade routes. And in my first version, it was very like simulation heavy, where like every station that has a line between it, there are ships going along that trade route. And the way you interact with that galaxy map is you can go and board one of those trade ships and take it over and steal it, hijack it, take it to a different station. And if you do that enough, it breaks the trade route because that's too dangerous for them now. They're getting pirated too much. And then I can't remember how you formed trade routes, but there was a way to do that as well. So you just like full simulation, full player control. Terrible idea. I really learned from that the further you go in a simulation direction, the less of a game you're making, really. Like, the less control you have as a designer. If it works out and turns into a good game, it's sheer chance. Like you can't do anything as a designer to make that. Well, I don't know of a way to like bend the simulation into something that's going to be a good game design experience. To actually, if you want the player to be in that, flow state where they have enough agency, but not so much agency that it becomes boring. That's something you've got to control so tightly. You need all the power you can get as a designer to just say, here's how the game works. You can do this, you can't do this. And when you do this, this happens. And I'm just going to dictate that for you. And it's not realistic. It's going to be a bit of a fudge. But if you don't allow yourself to do that. You're just at the mercy of whatever the simulation happens to be.
Yeah.
And I see games like that all the time where like these hugely ambitious projects of like, I'm just going to, space games especially, like space games, people expect them to be everything. And a lot of developers aim to make everything. It's just like, you're going to be able to mine asteroids, you're going to be able to settle on planets, you can build a space station, you can get crew together, you can do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's all very simulation based. And it's an exciting fantasy. I know where the allure of that comes from, and players want it, or they think they do. But A, it's wildly ambitious to make, just incredibly time consuming, and B, you just don't have any control as a designer over what kind of game experience you're making, and so it can end up being boring really easily.
Yeah, it's also hard to sort of, because it's possible to build a simulation that obviously is not a game, right? And then it can be hard to, because the simulation operates in a particular way. So many games operate under constraints, right? And you're trying to find a way to put the game into it. We ran aground on Jump Light Odyssey doing that, like our colony sim, because it was like this starship, this battle cruiser that you're basically got a crew of up to 200 people on, and they had to like have their own roles, and there were different divisions and Marines and all these different things. And so we had to like stand all of that up. And I remember we got to a particular point in the project, and it was like, this is a fucking fantastic simulation, but like we gotta haul ass on getting the game in here. Like we gotta, okay, what it's like, because it's, we were having those moments, and we did find it, like, it's in early access at the moment, stuck there in hibernation, but it got to a point where we were like, okay, we gotta get it in there. We've like spent enough time on this simulation, because you can just be like the light in the dark that doesn't get any closer a lot of the time with the simulation thing. It's never ending, when you're trying to simulate something.
Yeah, and I was not being nearly that ambitious, but even at my small level of like, I want the galaxy map to be this sort of simulated, factions vying for control and quite organic. It just was a dead end game design wise. It was just like, I can't make this, because you just have to do the same thing over and over again. The more simulation it is, the more repetitive the player's actual actions become, because whatever works will always work, basically.
Yeah. So how did you pull yourself out of this kind of simulation rut, or like sliding towards the black hole of that?
Yeah, one part of it was initially I was very keen on the sandboxy end of things, and I wanted it to be just each character you play as can be working for a different faction, and you as the player have no overall goal or no allegiance. You're just like, this time I'm working for Sovereign, this time I'm working for Foundry. And a lot of people have resistance to that. They're like, I don't really see the point of it. Why am I going to play again? And eventually I just I saw the light on that, and I was like, yeah, actually it does feel better if you have an overall goal. So rather than actually have you belong to any of those factions, I was really keen that there shouldn't be like good guys and bad guys. There are all these different factions with different objectives, and they have different like histories and different views on what's going on. And I didn't want the game to tell you what the objective truth was of any of that. So instead I made you basically be independent. So all the factions are bad guys, basically. They all want to control this galaxy.
It's more of a Red Harvest situation, right?
Yeah. I don't know that.
Oh, really? It's like Red Harvest is the book. It's a Dashiell Hammett crime novel.
Oh, yeah.
That like inspired Yojimbo and Fistful of Dollars and things like that.
Yes, I actually think I've read it. I just forgot the name. I was thinking video games.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So that now there's a sense of overall progress. You can be liberating these stations bit by bit. The thing I got really stuck on that I had to take several swings at was like, how do your missions relate to this? Because there isn't an obvious way that you stealing something from a ship or assassinating a guy would lead to these stations, going independent. And I tried a bunch of different ways. I was too hung up on it making sense. I thought that there needed to be an in-world reason for this to happen. And so, there was versions of it where the missions were missions, but if you also hijacked the ship, cleared it out, and delivered it, that would kind of build up a fleet. And then once you had enough of a fleet, you could liberate a station with that fleet. That didn't work because, again, by going simulation-y, you incentivize the player to do the same thing over and over again. And actually the missions, it was terrible because it broke missions themselves, because now it doesn't matter what your mission is, because you're ultimately going to clear the whole ship. Like, I don't know how I didn't see that one coming. That's really obvious in retrospect. But in my head, it was like the way I hoped it would work is that it would just be too difficult to clear every ship. It would like clearing a whole ship is an extra difficult goal for which there's an extra reward. But most of the time you'd just be like, no, this is too hard. I've just got to get in and do the job and get out. But actually the way the game works is that isn't true. Like if you can get to your objective and get out, that's already navigating most of the ship, and you probably can from there just take it all out. And plus the incentive for doing the completion thing was so strong. The players were always just, even if it was 3 times as hard, they would just bash their head against it, right? Because
Yeah,
that's the only way they make progress is if they do that. So they would just do it over and over again. And eventually the solution was just like, I just went back to brass tacks of like, game design wise, what do I want to happen? There was versions where like only certain kinds of missions would liberate the galaxy, and or ships you found along the way. This is the only time in our whole history as a developer that our review scores in a test went down from a previous review. It was every time we do a beta test, we ask people to rate the beta just out of 10. We don't give them any frame of reference or beyond that, just gut feel. What would you give out of 10? And usually it goes up, and that's a huge motivation boost. The one time it went down was like a year after the last beta in Heat Signature. We did a new beta and we got worse scores. And it was like, we just spent a year making the game worse. That wasn't actually true. The reason for the bad scores was just one little decision, which is super stupid on my end. I was just really struggling with this. Looking back on it now, I'm realizing this is the most I've ever floundered as a game designer. I just didn't know what I was doing.
Did you feel some pressure from Gunpoint as well, with like the difficult second album, or it was just the subject matter of the game and the challenges?
It always felt like a fight with Heat Signature. Like Heat Signature is my enemy. Well, the potential of it was my enemy. It's like it keeps promising to be all these different things, and I can't find what it needs to. And because it could be expanded in so many directions, you can't just flesh it out. You can't just be like, I'll just finish all the little bits of it. Like everything could be developed infinitely in all directions. So just focus was really hard. And the thing that screwed over that test round was my latest idea for progress was that, because I didn't want to incentivize any particular kind of mission, I didn't want to pollute your decision about what mission to do. I divorced progress from missions completely, and I just made it so that every now and then, as you're traveling around, you just see a ship with like, it flashes gold, and that's a siege ship, and you board that, and once you clear it out, you can send that to liberate a station. So your progress is just this passive thing that's happening ambiently. And the problem with it was the way that's happening is it's just on a schedule, like a sort of semi-randomized schedule. We ensure it's fair. But players don't know that. They don't get to see the algorithm. They don't know it's fair. So to them, it's just totally random. They're like, do I need to be scouring the galaxy? Should I just be flying around constantly looking for these things? Because that's the only way I make progress. I don't know what I do to trigger it. And I can't tell them either. You can't really, it would be so weird to have a pop-up that just says, don't worry about it. Like, just don't think about this.
It'll happen. Same guy.
Just let it happen, man. Every now and then, happen. Just trust us that we've made a good rate of progress for you. Because that's like the gamiest bullshit ever. And at that point, I was desperate enough that I was just like, getting down to, as a game designer, what do I want to happen? I want you to do the missions and not worry about what kind of missions you're doing. Just do the missions you want to do. And over time, you make progress. And those things should ideally be tied together, not completely separate. You want to feel doing these missions is making your progress. So let's just make it an XP bar. It's just like literally for every mission you do, we're already giving you pay, and we're balancing that so to incentivize, push you to do harder missions if you can, but not make it a miserable experience if you don't. And so it's just like, what if it's also all the pay you get is basically like an XP bar that is just liberation progress. And once that fills, you get to liberate a station. And that's exactly how it works in the final game. That just works. And it requires almost no explanation. Like we just call it liberation progress, I think. Like there's no more fancy wrapping than that. It's not very realistic. Exactly. The sort of the hand waving flavor text is something about like, the more audacious the missions are being done against these factions, the more people feel inspired, feel they're able to rise up and go independent, which, sort of maybe
like, that'll do.
That's a certain amount of sense, but it just doesn't matter. Like if the mechanic works and it does its game design job of like, okay, I just do these missions and I make progress, that feels good. Well, then also, people don't question it. It's like,
fine. Because players want to step into the magic circle, right? Like we kind of think that we need to give them all of these reasons and everything, but you actually don't need to give them many reasons to play the game they want to play and believe the things that they need to believe to play it, right? Yeah.
And then you go and play like any other game, and the amount of like random bullshit that is in that game that I as a player just completely accept. It's absolutely wild. Like Fire Emblem Three Houses, you've unlocked tea time with one of your students, and now you're going to ask the right questions 3 times in a row, and you get a perfect tea time score. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
There we go. Next Tom Francis game, here it comes. Tea time. Tea time tactics.
And like no one's mad about it. Like,
no one's
and
mad.
that one is weird. It's kind of creepy, and it's like
people are not mad about it. People are stoked about it as well. All right, so let's that's Heat Signature. We could just like the game. You could develop it forever. We could talk about it forever. It's Ty, my business partner and our creative director, just like fucking love that game. And hearing about his antics, and it was just one of my joys every day, like logging off his stand-ups when he was playing it.
Yeah, that was actually one of the most rewarding things about making it was that player stories were just so unique, and that people were just doing things I've never considered, finding tactics that I didn't know would work. And for our Steam trading cards, we actually, rather than making them about characters from the story, they were all players who'd done incredible things. We asked people to send in, like, tell us crazy things that happened to you, give us a video clip of it happening, and we'll immortalize you in the game as as these legends. And yeah, we just got like, I think it's like 5 or 6 amazing player stories of people just doing crazy things that use the mechanics to their full extent.
All right, you've teased me. Give me one. What's your favorite like player story?
The first one I remember, it was I'm gonna get the name wrong. I think his name was like Ferris or Harris. And we gave everyone like nicknames to like capture the story. And this one was Swap Shot, I think, because he launched himself from his pod, not at the airlock, but at a window for of a spaceship that had already been broken open. So it's like a force field now, and just like skidded into the room up against an armored guard who fired at him. And then he swapped with the guard so that the armored guards can't be hurt by bullets, but they can be knocked back by them.
Yeah.
So the guard teleported in front of his own buckshot, his own shotgun and shots, hit him, and then knocked him out the window. It's just like
amazing.
The most confusing 3 seconds of that guard's life. Like, is that a person flying towards us a window? Okay, fire. What the fuck?
Wow. Yeah, it's incredible. I remember, I've interviewed Tarn and Zach of Bay 12 Dwarf Fortress on here, and also Jason and Brian from Games of Card and Freehold Games. And like the stories that these emergent systems, obviously your Deus Ex one is classic as well with the drone. It's just so wonderful. Okay, let's do it. I got a bunch of topics here, so we're going to sort of like pick up the pace and hit sort of Tactical Breach Wizards. Well, let's breach into this game. Tell me, first of all, just give me the quick answer on, was it the concept of just wizards in Kevlar that came first? Or was it like clearing rooms and you needed a narrative context for that and you're like, this'll do?
It was the wizards thing came first, but that was when I worked at PC Gamer. And I think even before Gunpoint, it was a thing that a bunch of us were joking about, and none of us remember who said it first, but it was just an idea we all thought was really funny after watching like a new Call of Duty trailer.
Yeah.
We got thinking about the idea of like, what if they were just wizards? But everything else is the same. And that really tickled us, but it was never a serious game idea because I was never going to make a Call of Duty game, even once I became a game developer. And then years later, playing XCOM 2 a bunch and getting so into it, but so frustrated by it. I'm like, I just want to make a tiny XCOM, the simplest possible version, and get rid of like height differences and all this other stuff. But I had no theme idea for that really. It was just like, I don't know, just soldiers versus aliens again, I guess. Yeah. And like theme will come later. And then I suddenly thought, wait, Tactical Breach Wizards, because I'd written that down as like I think I mentioned it in a tweet once. That was my sort of version of it was Tactical Breach Wizards as a title. And then that was it. My note stock just starts with Tactical Breach Wizards in capital letters. From then on, those two things were just fused.
Did you tell the PC Gamer crew that it was happening?
Yeah, once I started to realize, like, actually, I think I do want to make this. I think this is our next game. This is during Heat Signature that I was having this idea. I emailed everybody I could think might have been in that conversation because I couldn't even remember fully who was there.
Did you give them release forms?
No, I just said, does anyone remember who started this? And either way, do you mind if I actually make a game of it? And no one could remember, and everyone was fine with it. So.
Awesome. Hell yeah. Okay, there's a couple of themes that run throughout all three of your games. And I actually think one of them is used so much that even though it's not technically a theme, I'm going to say it is. And that is defenestration. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is noir, right? And so like they all have this kind of noir twist to them, whether it be like the in-between moments, the narrative moments in Tactical Breach, or, like obviously Heat Signature is sci-fi and everything, but there's like a noir element to that, I would say too. And then you've got Gunpoint, obviously classic there. Mm-hmm. Tell me, first of all, what is your obsession with throwing people out of windows and throwing yourself through windows as well? Yeah.
That started with Gunpoint. I was aware of the word defenestration. Like my first City of Heroes character was called the Defenestrator. Because it's, everyone who learns that word in some obscure context is really pleased with themselves and starts trying to use it in a sentence everywhere.
I also love that you have the definition of it in the game in Tactical Breach Wizards.
I was just using it as an objective, and then we got testers saying, what does that mean? Like, oh yeah, not everyone knows that word. I actually need to tell you what it means. And then, as an actual game thing, it was, breaking glass is just inherently satisfying. And I was looking for breaking into a building.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, you want to
One
be
of
able to
the
do
options,
that.
yeah.
And then as soon as you make it, it's really easy to code that. Like, it's just so straightforward. And getting just a sound effect from freesound.org of glass breaking, you just do that. It feels so good immediately, and it's so easy to make that's why it became a staple. Is just like, this is an easy thing to do that's reliably satisfying. I always I think during Gunpoint, I settled on this idea that our games need to have brain food and obvious pleasures. So brain food is like strategy, puzzle, whatever you actually need to think about and engage with and make plans and all that stuff. But on top of that, you also just need regular things you're doing that just feel good, just inherently satisfying, like punching people in Gunpoint, whacking with a wrench and heat signature. And knocking people through windows is a really reliable one that just works in every context.
It's very good. Yeah, absolutely. KGB favorite as well. Okay, and so noir thing. Tell me, do you think I'm onto something there? Is there anything that you feel?
It's interesting you say that.
I could see you kind of wince when I said heat signature. You're like, is it in that one?
I don't think I winced, but that I haven't thought of it in that way. I think you're right. I mean, it's a genre I love, and there's a style to it that is so powerful and distinctive and unique. Like, every time I hear a good noir soundtrack to something, I'm like, I want to make another noir game. It's just so evocative. And kind of classy and cool and dark, and it's such a good vibe. I think, it's not. I think it's reasonable to say Heat Signature has noir influences, especially if you finish it. There's a there's a sort of plot development at the end that is very noir. And I might be maybe growing out of it a little bit as a plot motif, because part of noir, my interpretation of it anyway, is like a kind of nihilism of just like, there is no good at the heart of everything. Ultimately, everything is morally bankrupt, and the good guys won't win, and there's no hope, and it's all very depressing. And I think with Wizards, I started to move in a more positive direction of like, obviously there is noir vibes in a lot of it, but I wanted a story that was like ultimately hopeful and more optimistic. But it's mostly just a cool vibe.
All right, next question. There's something that I noticed that I think is done really well in Tactical Breach Wizards is, like you mentioned, by the end of the game, you've unrolled a bunch of different abilities across these different characters. And just so folks know, it's not like XCOM where, it's they're kind of like procedurally generated characters or whatever, right? You've actually created bespoke characters that have, personalities and set of abilities and everything.
Yeah,
right?
We as developers have created those characters.
Yes, sorry. Great clarification. But you also, most of these games, they'll give you like a little skill tree, or you can buy your abilities, but you're rolling them out to the player on a kind of progression schedule. And there seems to be, or when I played it, there was brilliant narrative context and like reasoning for everyone. It's like, really, I was like, how is he doing this? How did you choose? Did you choose what abilities needed to come at particular times? And then you were like, all right, let's write the story to sort of give us that opportunity, or did the story head in particular ways? And you're like, actually, there'd be a cool ability from that. Tell us about that process of like narrativizing every one of these abilities as they're delivered to the characters.
Yeah, I'm delighted to hear that, because behind the scenes, it was a random fudge, basically, of just like, a lot of them were just like, oh, if you have this ability at this point, it just breaks this level. So we better have that ability unlock after that level. Like Dahl, her swap ability, you can upgrade it to not require line of sight, and that breaks so many puzzles.
Right, okay, yeah.
So we had to lock that off till a certain point. And actually, it's very late in the game that we decided that to tie certain perks to the anxiety dreams. So every character has an anxiety dream at some point in the campaign, which is a sort of one-off mission where they cooperate with a copy of themselves in a sort of dream world, and they get into some of their personal shit. And often there's a twist with how that works. And we had a couple of perks where like, you really need this perk at this point in the campaign, and we have to make sure you have it. And we had no system for like auto granting them, and it would feel weird to just sort of give you one randomly. I thought about the thing you could do where like, if you don't have it, we give it to you for free. And if you do have it already, then we give you a free perk point. But it always felt a bit awkward of like, do we explain that that's happening? Are people going to feel like they missed out on a perk point if they already spent it on that or whatever? And ultimately we had these anxiety dreams, and it's just like, okay, this would be a good way because it's already different, it's already a unique thing.
Yeah.
I also wanted people to feel rewarded for playing them. And so just at the end of it, you say, by doing that, you've unlocked this power. That was a nice way of just ensuring that you have certain powers at certain times.
Yeah.
Some of them we didn't need to give you, like Jen's Chain Shock one. She's the first one to have an anxiety dream, which suits her character, I think. And that one, you don't need it. It's not a particularly important perk. And actually, the reason I made that one an auto grant was just that it's not that appealing to choose that one. It's like, it's for extreme cases. It's like, it lets you chain together as many targets as you like. Her Chain Shock ability, you route it through as many, you route it through enemies. Usually it's just 2 enemies. You can upgrade it to be 3. But there's this extra perk where if you were willing to spend 2 mana, now you can do twice as many. So you can do like up to 6. And you almost never need it, but it's cool that it's there. It's nice to have that option if the situation ever does come up.
Yeah.
So that was a good candidate for that. But some of them, like Banks's Death's Door one. So Death's Door, she can create a portal in the wall and then push people through it. So it's like, if there is no window, create a window.
I laughed to myself when she came into the game and that ability was there. I'm like, he's literally creating defenestration when there aren't windows. He's created an ability specifically to give players more opportunities to throw people through windows.
Full credit to our artist, John Roberts. That was his idea, that ability.
Oh, awesome. Great. Stuff. Hell yeah, John.
Yep. And the final mission, or sort of series of missions, this is one big heist and you're performing 3 different parts of it in sequence. It's so fucking complicated. And it's like mechanically complicated as well. And this is the simplest version after many iterations, but there is a bit where you need to sort of trick somebody into setting fire to something. And you can just do it by walking over there and having him set fire to you. And as collateral damage, you set fire to the plot critical thing. But ultimately, it was just too much of an ask for the player to figure that out and to actually do it. Like, you have to really understand what is required of you, and you do something very counterintuitive to pull it off. And I don't think we actually hit that as a stumbling point. I just sort of foresaw it as like, a lot of people are going to get stumped on this, and I just want this to be a smoother experience. So the upgrade for Death's Door lets you basically create a portal underneath somebody and have them come out of the Death's Door. So now you can just transport an enemy wherever you want. And combined with the ability to turn enemies rabid when you're in dog form as the druid hitman, that gives you a really easy 1-2 punch of just like turning the enemy rabid so he attacks his friends, and then using the Death's Door thing to make sure one of his friends is right next to him and right next to the plot critical thing. We just kind of hand it to you on a plate, basically. Like, this just works. It's a reliable way of doing it. I don't want you to get stuck on this. That level is actually really difficult anyway, even once you do that. So I just didn't want people to be wasting time setting that up and not understanding it and then be in too difficult a situation. So it was a bit of a fudge, but that was a case where that ability is really powerful, and I didn't want to give it to you, ahead of time. I needed to make sure you had it by the end of the game, and then the characters can actually talk about it and stuff like that. But I think some of what you're talking about probably comes from there are quite a few moments in the story where game mechanics are either acknowledged or like critical to solving something or understanding how something works in the story. And that wasn't like necessarily a conscious focus, but it got flagged up a lot in reviews and stuff of people saying like that was a cool thing. And I think it comes from my tastes in stories where even when I'm watching a movie, I really want the way the world works to make sense. I really want to know what the internal logic is. There's got to be that internal consistency. Yeah, there's movies people love that I just can't like because I just don't understand. When this ship is chasing this ship, why can't the one that's chasing accelerate? Or like, why they're shooting each other all the time? Is that doing any damage? Is there, it's hitting shields. Do they have limited shield capacity? When is this going to run out? Like, I don't need to know every technical detail of how it works, but I need to know what the dynamics are in order to understand, are they in peril? Like, can this go on forever? Is this, what is the mechanic here? And so I always want stories to have mechanics to them and for me to understand the mechanics. And if a story does that successfully, I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm absolutely gripped. I'm like, oh my man, they're just so unlikely they're going to survive this. Like, as long as I believe in the mechanics, I'm so engrossed. So yeah, the story mechanics for Wizards hinges a lot on how certain abilities work. And yeah, even just the rewind thing comes from the Navy SEER being able to see a second into the future. It's a bit of a fudge in that the way he would probably experience it is more like what I was talking about originally, where you see ghosts come out. Stuff, but the rewind thing just it effectively is the same thing. You can just visualize what would happen if this happens, what would happen if that happens. And yeah, I just like when stories have mechanical logic to them and make sense in that way.
Yeah, and it is done. You know, if I could compliment you for a second, you and the team, it is done incredibly well. Like I remember, you know, we'd be standing out the front of the door and the conversations going down, like the little dialogue, and they'd be talking about, oh shit, this thing up ahead. Oh, okay, well, we should probably get this going. And then the new ability is unveiled as soon as you get in there, and you're like, okay, I got this new tool. But it wasn't just like, it didn't feel just thrown in. It felt like things were hinting at it or leading up to it. It felt really contextual and situational. It didn't feel forced.
Awesome.
It was really well done.
Did you feel that way about the broom breach ability?
I was just like, that was just so awesome. I don't think I even cared. I was just like, fuck yeah.
For the listener, this is the freelance storm witch. One of her abilities is to jump out of any window, ride her broom to any other window, and enter again from there. She's a very like mobility focused class, and we give that ability to you a little way into the campaign, like after the first kind of proper mission is over. First 2 missions are already done, and that was a game balance decision, just like, let's not overwhelm you with the possibilities here, let's have that unlocked later. And I thought, shit, she is wearing her broom on her back the entire time. How are we going to explain that she can't use it until this mission? And my decision was, she just forgot she had it. Just one of the other characters is like, I guess your broom's going to make that easy. And she's like, oh my God, I've got my broom with me.
That irreverent humor makes it gives you so much leeway mechanically in those, and I think you use it really well. As
exactly.
Evidenced, yeah.
Magic and comedy are both like blank checks that you can use to explain anything, and it's great. They're particularly powerful together because you can explain anything with magic, and the only risk is it might sound really contrived. But then if it sounds really contrived, that's funny. So we get away with it both ways.
So I want to talk about another thing that's an incredible tool that you use really well across your games. You spoke about it in Heat Signature too, which is breaking the fourth wall. You know, and obviously it can have its thorns as well, as we found out from your fantastic playtester who reminded you of that very angrily. Have you figured out any, because you do it quite well, as I was saying, definitely in Tactical Breach Wizards. I appreciated it in different times when, and you know, it might not be like talking to the player or anything in that sense, but acknowledging that like it's a game or things like that. So over these years and these 3 games, have you figured out some kind of a framework or do's and don'ts for breaking the fourth wall or having characters or the game refer to itself in a meta sense?
Yeah, I try and keep a light touch with like a direct fourth wall break where like a character talks to the audience. Like I don't really like that unless there's one time it happens in Breach Wizards, I think I'm right in saying, where and it's during a dream and it's Jen is having a low self-esteem moment, and the stage directions jump in to tell her that 85% of testers rated her as the best character.
That is literally the point that made me write this note down.
So that's a full-on fourth wall break. I allow myself that because it's in a dream. I guess it's not technically a character talking to the audience. It's like the stage directions talk to the audience, and it's very relevant to what's going on. It just, most of the like comedy things just come from like, I had that thought as I'm writing this. I'm like, it's so sad that Jen has such low self-esteem because people love her. Like really, she's a favorite character. She should know this. I'm just going to tell her this.
That's awesome.
And in the context of a dream, I felt that was all right. I think a lot of I think the stuff I like is mostly lampshading. It's just like, this is silly. Let's just point out that it's silly, so we know it's silly. And if you know that the player isn't going to be bothered by that, then that can be fine. And you get the humor value out of it as well. I'm thinking about like the way you unlock outfits in Wizards is confidence points, and the narratively you already own all the outfits, and it's just you don't have the confidence to wear them yet. So
I really
you don't feel confidence.
That
was again just like learning from Heat Signature. How do I mechanically want this to work? I want the optional extra objectives not to give you any gameplay benefit, because if you do that, you make the game easier for people who are finding it easy. And you don't make it any easier for people who are finding it difficult. So I wanted it to be cosmetic unlocks, and I wanted it to relate to, stylish objectives, like doing things that you didn't have to do. And it just triggered the thought of like, well, confidence and outfits do have a connection. There is in real life, it does actually take confidence to wear fancy outfits. And we just say that to you on the screen, and people like it. It's just, I guess if it comes from like an organic place like that, and I guess like maybe organic origins is a core part of it, because that would be true in the case of that fourth wall breach with Jen. And the first one was in Gunpoint. If you keep punching somebody, we pop up a message to tell you only need to punch them once, because when you attack an enemy in Gunpoint, you jump on them, you pin them to the ground, and then we could have done that as just an automated punch animation, and then you stand up, but I didn't see any particular reason to sort of force that. So you go into a pinned state, and then you can click the left mouse button to hit them. and it makes the sound effect I found was not really a punch sound effect. It was more of a slap sound effect. Like, canonically, you are punching them, but it just sounds like a slap, and that for some reason is very satisfying. It just like it feels silly. And you can do as much as you like, and it's just as fast as you can click the mouse. And so everybody who plays the game, the first time they do it, it's just like slap, 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 slap. And like you don't have to hit them once, you can just get off them at that point, but I didn't force you to get off them. But it did feel like, well, if you hit them like 10 times, I think they're dead now. I think so. We just have like blood seep out of them after the 10th punch. And yeah, you keep doing it, a message pops up. So you only have to hit them like once, and then you keep doing it. It's like, well, what you're doing is fine too. And there's like 10 of those messages, and it goes on and on and on. And the response to that was really strong. Like that's a lot of people's favorite thing about the whole game is that message. And it took me by surprise because I was having fun with it, and I hope people would laugh at it when they saw it. But I didn't expect it to like have such a big effect. And I think with that one, it's people feel seen in a bad way. Just like they know that when they're doing it, like they know they don't have to keep hitting this guy. That nobody thinks someone takes 1,000 hits to keep them unconscious. They're just doing it out of this little dark thrill of just like, they're just being silly. They're just being like a little gremlin. And they don't expect the game to notice it. And when the game notices it, it's like, the door just opened. And they have this moment like self-consciousness of like, oh yeah. Oh. And I think it's the reason it's positive, even though that is in theory a negative thing, is that, it's such a silly thing. And you kind of, I don't know, it's kind of expressive in a way. It's like you're being a weird little gremlin and someone caught you being a weird little gremlin, and we expected it. We thought you would be a weird little gremlin, and here's your little reward for it.
I think those moments in games where, because there are so many emergent possibilities, even in games that are like, they're not, their whole point, they're not this huge systemic thing, or they're not meant to be this like unraveling emergent gameplay. Just even the simplest, tightest games can have like emergent possibilities that make it hard for the developer, for us, to actually know, like you were saying with the, being out of the airlock and like, unless this is part of some master plan, like we can't really at any point in time actually actually confidently guess what the player intention is. But when you find those moments and we're able to do it, and then we can reach out to players and say like, hey, we see you, we know what you're up to, and you get it right. It's this magical like shaking of hands of the game and the player that is just so special.
Yeah, we haven't done it yet. I'd like to add this because it's a real missed opportunity that in Breach Wizards, there's a time when you fight a boss who cannot be defeated, or in theory cannot be defeated, because it's not time to defeat her yet. This is a situation where she's going to come and just fuck you up, and you're just supposed to like, get fucked up. And there's a clever solution to it, but it's not defeating her. And so every time you get her down to 0 health, she spends 1 mana to duplicate herself, and the duplicate has 2 extra health or something like that. So she gets tougher every time it happens. And I just gave her like, I think it was 50 mana initially, so 50 times she can resurrect herself and get tougher. And so that's it. No one's. It's just not possible with the resources you have to ever defeat her that many times.
Classic game developer mistake.
Of course, people found ways to do it. And they're like, all right, fuck it. It's 99 mana. And she didn't get tougher originally. So it was like 99 mana and she gets tougher every time. So now, even if you did it, like the last clone would have, 100 extra health or 200 extra health or something. And of course, people have found ways to do it. And I'm like, I'm such an idiot. I should have just realize people are going to do this and just add a message for if they do it. What I'd love to do, I'm not promising we'll do this because it is a lot of work and it seems a bit silly, but it would be really fun just to roll credits for that. And I would do that in a heartbeat, except that our credits are quite an involved thing that gives like, it caps off different people's stories. It gives like follow-ups on what happened to different characters.
Right,
so it'd be a spoiler and it wouldn't make sense. So we can't
get like a mock one going that just goes for like 3 seconds and they're like, no, just kidding. That's fantastic. All right, cool. I'm glad I had the anxiety dreams on here, but you've spoken about that. That's fantastic. But we did touch on some stuff there about the bonus objectives. And when you're talking about challenge, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I made a note because you've spoken about the like the crazy possibilities that you get with this rewind, and the fact that you can choose any character at any time, any ability in any order, like all of these, and then the tool set that you get as well by the end of the game. How the fuck did you balance your bonus objectives throughout the game to make sure that they were that sweet spot of challenging? And there are kind of a few philosophies to this, right? One is where you sweat the details over this and you try and get it perfect. And the other is like, you kind of just throw it out there haphazardly with like you're happy with a huge margin of error. How did you approach it?
Yeah, it was tricky, and got to give a lot of credit to our level designer, Steve Lee.
Yeah.
So I built, I think, all of Act 1 by myself before bringing him on board. And then Act 2 onwards, he was doing a lot of the level design and all of the optional dream missions.
And we should just say quickly what they are, right? So like bonus objectives. So every room generally that you're breaching has like almost all of the characters can have like a bonus objective that, as you say, is, or we should call them optional objectives, right?
Yeah, confidence goals is what we call them in the game.
Confidence goals,
because they get your confidence points for these outfits, and they are they're per character. So gens will usually be about completing it in a certain number of turns. Zan will often have objectives about stopping reinforcements or not letting your team get hurt. So they're kind of themed to what the character cares about or what they're good at, because doing that goal gets them confidence. I wanted to have a bit of a narrative thing of like, it makes sense that doing it in this particular way would make this character feel good about themselves. And yeah, Steve and I had a lot of back and forth with, he, as he's making levels, would struggle to find any of our existing confidence goals that fit and felt good and would work with the level he wants to make. So would have ideas for other confidence goals we could add, and I would add some of those and come up with some of my own of like, maybe we could work this way. It was part of the problem is that gens is too good. Like completing in a certain number of turns is always fun. Yeah. That just works on every single level. Right. And we never found anything else that good. like things like preventing reinforcements. It's, sometimes it's more fun to let the reinforcements come in and take them on. We actually kind of have, originally the idea was to have mutually exclusive ones, because that was leaning into the character side of it, of like Dahl, this resistance fighter, when she's fighting the chapel, these are her lifelong enemies. They're have a stranglehold on her country. She will kill as many of them as she can. Yeah. Not killing, actually knocking them out. But she canonically does not care if she does kill them. But so she wants the reinforcements to come in, and Zan is like a tactical, he wants it clean and fast, minimum violence, seal the doors, don't let anyone don't trigger any more violence than you need to. So we actually tried having opposing ones that you couldn't get both, and people hated it. It was just instant no for the players. Like, no, this is really annoying.
Yeah, it must just completely rub up against that completionist style.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to be so careful with like gamers want a game, and
especially you're saying here are the optional objectives for our completionists, and then you can only get one out of them.
Because ultimately you just have to do the level twice, and it's like that's not really that interesting, unless it totally distorted how you play. If they were like fundamentally game-changing things of like, here's approach where you do it minimum violence versus maximum violence, maybe it could work. But yeah, it's within a system where usually you can get them all. So if you then start changing that, it's just confusing and annoying. But yeah, it's just a very iterative process. Some characters we really struggled to find good confidence goals. I feel like Banks doesn't have a lot of great ones, because there's things like pushing people through death's doors. That's a fun thing to try and challenge people to do. But the problem is that ability you can only make one death door by default. You can upgrade it to make more, but we don't know if you have that perk. So we can't give you a challenge to do that. Exactly. Technically, we didn't like hold ourselves strictly to, you must be able to get every confidence goal, even if you don't have any perks. Because we didn't want to rely on any particular perk, but we just can't hit that goal of just like making everything possible, even if you have no perks. If we did, it would be too easy when you do have the right perks, right? Yeah. The whole point of those goals is to challenge you. So we don't promise you that your perk choices will never matter for those. There's probably certain combos of perks where you just can't get this confidence goal. But then players are really inventive, and often they find ways to do things that we didn't think they could. So yeah, it's just a case of finding ones that were flexible enough. And then when we found gaps of like, this level, I can't find anything for Rion to do that fits the existing confidence goals. Yeah. Let's come up with new ones. But yeah, it was quite, not too bad, but like a little bit time consuming, because each one of those is unique code, right? There's not an easy way to just generate those. It's probably as much or more work to add a new type of confidence goal as it is to add a new upgrade for an ability. Yeah. And adding new perks has a huge gameplay impact. Like for me, it's like the lifeblood of the game. That's what I get excited about as a player, is like, how do I upgrade my guys, and what possibilities does that unlock for me? It's amazing how easy those are to program, and how quickly you can make those. So confidence goals are a little bit expensive that way. But yeah, I think it was worth doing. We needed that extra skill ceiling, because I knew I didn't want the critical path to be difficult. I didn't want people to hit brick walls and get stuck. Yeah. Especially because it's such a narrative focused game. I kind of knew there would be people who just want this story. Yeah. They're excited about the idea of tactical wizards, and they want to see it through. I knew that we were going to offer more story than people were probably expecting. So I wanted to be able to like sell the game on that and say, look, this is a story driven game. Please play it. Yeah. You will be able to complete it, I promise. And so, yeah, I knew that would be too easy for some people, and confidence goals were a way of giving that extra depth for certain folks.
Yeah, really effective. And again, like many other parts of the game that I've mentioned, I really love sort of like how you've tied them in narratively, like and diegetically into the game. It's really cool. Another thing I think is a great segue talking about balance and how you manage that with the goals here. But playtesting is something that I think you do better than most like small scale indie developers that I've known. And it seems like you have a structure over the years, you know, every now and then when you're working on a game, I'll receive an email and be like, hey, friends or whatever, you know, I'm working on this game. And so it seems as well, like I'm looking from the outside and I'm about to ask you like what it actually is, what are your methods from the inside, but it looks like you've got a few different ways of doing things, you know, like obviously qualitative, quantitative, you've got your little close, you know, circle of friends who obviously are fantastic game designers who you respect and love like myself. But you know, this relationship that you've had with Valve, I mean, Valve are famous for their playtesting. Yeah. Like, I know that relationship has continued past, you know, your time at PC Game with other folks at Valve and everything. So talk to me about your approach to playtesting, your influences, how you built up these frameworks, what they are, and the impact that they have on your games. Because it's clear, like almost everything that we've spoken about, you've referenced testing.
Yeah, you're right. I think it came from Valve initially because that was, you know, my education in how you make games was mostly from Valve, because other developers were more closed off. You don't really get to see how the sausage is made necessarily. And also Valve are just consistently making great stuff. And so the way they're doing it probably is right. And they're also like, I don't know, this maybe might not be their rep these days, but they always seem so humble to me. They would just be the first people to say, we don't know what we're doing. We try stuff and we just have to test it. We don't know anything till you test it. And people can have such different reactions than what you're expecting. And I think I internalized that like there isn't a conflict between being a good game designer and taking people's feedback and doing something about it. Like those two things are in harmony. That is being a good game designer. But there are so many people who see it as a fight between those two things of like, oh, but I want to be a designer. I want to choose how the game is. And then people, I'm not just going to change it because people say I should change it. This is a Valve mantra too, but that it's very true that if testers are finding something wrong with your game, they're right about that. And if they're telling you how to fix it, they're probably wrong about that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. They know that something is wrong, but the way that you should fix it is, don't listen to what they're saying. Watch what they're doing. And
sometimes they are right, especially if everyone's agreeing on how you should fix it. Like often you've got to consider that point. And there's always on every project, there's something that I will resist for a long time of like, no, they're wrong about this one. They're wrong about this one. I just got to be this way. And most of the time I end up caving on that. I'm trying to remember what it was for Gunpoint, but definitely the biggest sticking point in Gunpoint was like directionality of connections. I was saying you can connect a light switch to a trapdoor, that drag a line from the light switch to the trapdoor. If you drag a line from the trapdoor to the light switch, that means when the trapdoor opens, the light switch flicks, which is meaningless. And it needs to work that way because there are certain things you might want to do. You can use things as relays. The trapdoor could actually just be a relay in a circuit where you want it to open and then trigger something else. But a lot of players just didn't get that. And we just had to do iteration after iteration on trying to make that clear. You know, there's blobs flowing down the lines. There's arrows and stuff. There's the tutorial is so like passive aggressively like, can I get from the light switch to the door? And then I eventually just had to add a thing of like, if you do it the other way around, there's a special message for like, nope, not that way around. From the light switch to the door. But testing, the method used to be do this large scale testing, which I can talk more about the details of how we do it, where you send out a build to 1,000 people, Steam keys, and have them fill in a survey form. And then I would take it to shows as well. And what I found there was that the large-scale testing would tell you what the problems are, and watching people play at shows tells you how to solve it.
Right.
Because on Heat Signature, there was loads of people struggled with the flight controls. It's this Newtonian physics thing where once you're going at a certain velocity, you're going to stay at that velocity unless you accelerate in a different direction. And you're also trying to pull up alongside spaceships that are themselves moving and then dock with their airlock. And moving towards the airlock is like a pretty minor challenge once your velocities are matched. But when they're not matched, you're trying to solve two problems at once. You're like, people just aim towards the airlock and miss it. And when I watch people play at shows, there was like about a third of people just get it right away. It's just like, this makes sense to them and they're just good at it. Then another third of people would not get it at all at first, and then it would click after like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a few attempts. They'd be like, oh, okay, I need to match my speed first, or I need to, he's on my left, but actually I need to accelerate up because of our relative velocities. And then there'd be another third of people who never get it. It never makes sense to them. It frustrates the hell out of them. They don't understand what's going on. And watching those people was really educational. And I realized that velocity matching thing was the problem. It was like, they can't factor in the relative speed. So the airlock's on the right, they thrust right. And they've missed it now because the ship is actually traveling north relative to them. And so now they're behind it. And now, well, it's up now. I just accelerate up. No, now it's on your left. It's like, they'll just never get there. And watching them made me realize, like, once the velocity is matched, they're going to have a fine time with it. They can pull up alongside it. So we added a brake button that is, I think at some point we'd tried brake before that, where it was like galactic stationary. So you just hold that down and now you'll stop completely in space, which is actually useless because anything you're trying to board is going to be
moving. Yeah.
But it was because people didn't understand the idea of thrusting in the opposite direction to slow down. They go really fast. They didn't know how to slow down.
Yeah.
I'm like, to slow down, you thrust in
Just
the other
go the
direction.
other way.
Like, I don't want to go in that direction. No, you won't go in that direction. You've got some velocity. You need to get rid of it. I was just like, okay, there's just some people who are not going to click with this. And this is why you shouldn't make a game that has two completely different modes in it, because you can only sell that game to the Venn diagram that overlaps between those two people. Like, people have to like both of those things. And eventually I realized, like, the space part of this is not important. I don't care about it anymore. Like, there was a version, we could have expanded the game in that direction, but we didn't. And we focused on the interior game, which is ultimately the right call. And now that we've done that, we just need to make sure the space thing isn't getting in the way. And so, the brake button, I put that back in and made it so that it matches velocity to the nearest ship rather than actual stationary. So it's relative stationary. So just go towards a ship, then hold down right mouse button, and you will slowly match velocity. And from there, you can just see it as a simple stationary target.
Yeah, great.
And that solved it.
And so you're saying, so it sounds like you would use these large surveys to like figure out a problem, like you were saying, but then when you take it to the shows, I'm imagining it's the actual act of watching them play that then helps you define what's wrong. You know that something's wrong, but then you can figure out why because you're watching their behavior.
Yeah, and especially what the fix is. I knew people were struggling with the ship controls, but until you see them struggle, and when you do see them struggle, it's so obvious. It's just like, you need this to happen first.
Yeah, you haven't figured this out. You missed this thing or blah, blah, blah.
But the funny thing is, because of COVID, we never took Breach Wizards to any shows. We never showed it publicly. I watched a couple of friends play it for 2 hours or something. But yeah, probably a total of like 5 hours of watching people play in real life, just like 3 people total. So very little in-person testing. And we seem to get away with that. And so I don't know, maybe it wasn't as important as I thought. Or maybe we just never had a core problem like that with Wizards where something was like deeply counterintuitive to people. Because that was, in both cases with Gunpoint and Heat Signature, there was something that was tripping people up, and I didn't know how to solve it until I saw them hit it. And with Breach Wizards, the only thing that was like that was people did struggle with the foresee phase. Like, you click a button to see how enemy actions will play out, and then you're in this very special state where the enemies have acted now, but the turn isn't over. And you're choosing then whether to allow that to be what happened or whether to rewind
it, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like preview and then confirm. And we used to call it preview or something like that. But that gets confusing because a preview, you expect to then go back and do it for real.
Yeah.
And actually it's done. Like, if you're happy with this, we just move on. We don't show it again. So it was hard to convey, like, you're going to see things play out. You're not committed to it. But if you do like it, then it has happened. It's kind of a weird thing to express. Foresee ended up being the right word, I think, for getting it across to people. And I just had, the way we sort of boiled down the solution to that was, I saw that feedback coming in as text in early tests, and then I wrote a question about it, like, did you have any of these 3 problems? Expected to be able to rewind something and couldn't. Generally confused about the turn flow, and one other, like things that have come up a lot before. I then just had a multiple choice answer for that, so that then I could see numbers on it and see, like, okay, this beta we got better on this and we got better on that. And the one that I was really critical on was like, expected to be able to rewind something and couldn't. If that ever happens, the game is broken. Because I need you to have that total faith that you can try whatever you like and you'll never I'm never going to say, aha, that's locked in stone now.
Yeah.
So we had to be really clear about this. There's an end turn button, and that's the only time you can't undo something. And we have these big warnings that pop up and you go over it, like, you cannot undo after this. And then we have a whole dedicated level just to tutorialize the flow of foresee and rewind. It was actually really hard to tutorialize because to tutorialize rewind, you have to force the player to make a mistake.
Yes. Yep.
And when they rewind, they're back in the previous state they were in. If you force them to make a mistake, then they'd be forced to do it again. If you don't force them to make a mistake, they might never make the mistake, and then they never have to use the rewind button. And like eventually they'll use the rewind button, probably. But of course, when you tutorialize something, I need to know when you do it. I need to tell you about it then and there. It was very tricky. We went through a lot of versions of it that didn't work. And the difficult thing we screwed up a lot was the last level of the prologue is this big decision point for the Navy Seer, where he has to sort of choose whether to save a hostage or his commanding officer. And it's not really a choice. We force you to make it one way, but I wanted you to see it both ways. Like foresee this, then foresee that, rewind. That was meant to be the tutorial for foresee and rewind. But the problem is we're also forcing a choice on you. We present it as a choice, but it's not really a choice. Ultimately, you have to do it this one particular way because it's plot critical. That might sound like bullshit, but if you've played the full game, we get out of it, I think, eventually. I don't want to spoil anything about that. There's a reason for that. And the problem was, we're forcing this choice on you. And also players expect to be able to optimize. They expect to be able to save both. They're like, there must be a way. I'll just rewind and I'll just do it again and again and again. If you're also trying to teach them how the UI works at that time, it's just too much. It was just like, it was our worst rated level for a long time. So we introduced a new level. It's okay, on this level, we're just going to teach you foresee and rewind. Went through loads of different iterations of like, how do we do this? How do we force you to make a mistake, but then allow you to do it the second time without it just being total bullshit, without it being like, click on this guy. Actually, my idea, which my team hated, so I built it, was I'm just going to ask you, have the worst turn possible. Like, get yourself shot. Don't hurt any. Shoot a friend. Lose as much health as you can. Just do everything wrong and then rewind. So then it's like, it's not forcing a mistake. I'm asking you to do something and then it could be fun, I thought. But
to experiment.
Everyone thought that was mad. And what we did in the end was, because you have an AI-controlled teammate for that mission, we make it kind of her fault. So she gets in a situation where she's going to get shot by somebody, and you ask her, can you dodge that? And she's like, well, you're the one with foresight. You tell me. So you get to use foresight to see if she can dodge it. You establish, no, she can't. And then you rewind and save her. And it's a little bit silly because, they're having a conversation in the middle of this. This is like a 1 second thing. It doesn't really make sense, but I think it successfully takes the blame off of you. Like, we don't force you to make a mistake. We ask you to investigate what happens if this happens.
And it's also one of those things, like, too, as someone who played it, I didn't even think for a moment that, they were like having a conversation while time was like completely paused in between the fabric of space and time. Couple more questions on the playtesting thing. I'm really interested to know what the difference or the delta is between peer tests when you go to, like, say, your friends who are game developers, or you're putting it in front of game developers, and then stuff from players. Do you find that game developers are the same, where they're like, this thing's broken and you should do this, and you're like, that's fucking wrong. That's not right as well. Like, are we no better than the players themselves as well? Or
I think game developers are definitely better at giving you ideas for solutions. And when I've done that kind of testing, it's much more ad hoc. It's just send me an email with your thoughts, and so they'll zero in on certain things that really stand out to them. I do think I always want to do the large scale testing, and I've decided that the worst number of testers for anything is 2. Like one tester is bad, right? Because it could be wildly misrepresentative, and I've had that with, even with great game designers, they come back to me with like obsessing about the way a certain like gradient of texture, like there's some banding on this, you really got to fix that. And I'm like, we don't need it. It's going to be fine.
Thank you for your time.
But with one tester, that's going to be a biased sample, right? Like, so you're not thinking everyone's going to think that. With 2 testers, if they ever agree on something, you become convinced that is the absolute truth. And it's 100%, there's still a very good chance that they're totally unrepresentative. You've got to have tons of them. So I take it all with a pinch of salt. But fellow developers are great for inspiration. They're maybe not spelling out a specific solution. Usually they're not trying to do that. They're just like, here's the problem. And in fact, better at describing what the problem is too, because although testers will let you know that there is a problem, as with some of the examples we've talked about, it wasn't that clear about what the problem was. Like the folks who are struggling with the Newtonian physics and heat signature, I don't think they could have told me I'm struggling with relative velocity. I don't think they could have told me I need a button to like match speed. That they couldn't have said exactly what their problem was. Whereas game developers often might have experienced something similar, and they can be like, okay, problem
we've
with
seen this before, or
there was something my friend Chris DeLay at Introversion said early on with Breach Wizards, which was that he was feeling like anything that caused him to take damage felt like an illegal move. And there were lots of things that would cause that. And so he was feeling like a little bit hemmed in, like there's just one solution to this, because anything where I take damage feels like I'm being told I was wrong, and that's not a valid move. I can't remember if the game was harsher on that, but eventually we introduced mechanics where it's very difficult to avoid damage completely, because health was feeling irrelevant for a while, because you have perfect knowledge, you can just avoid all damage. We didn't want to we don't make the game so hard that there's no way to avoid taking a hit in a bad way. But we did introduce stuff like the heavy gunners, where even if you're in cover, you take like 1 graze damage from them. So with that, health becomes a resource you need to manage. And that, I think, worked in the sense of like, you don't feel like you fucked up when you take that damage. It's like, this is a cost of doing business. I'm going to have to take this 1 damage, and I've just got to think about it. But yeah, that was a tricky challenge to like get health to actually matter.
Yeah, I actually, there was something that I noticed as I played, is I was playing to avoid any kind of like health damage at all. And that I would often rewind and find ways. And that wasn't just, I noticed that was kind of on me as well as the kind of player that I am too. But then later in the game, I definitely became more relaxed about that as the heat turned up. Yeah, and
that's fine. If like, obviously anything the player is enjoying is good. And like I say, I wanted the game to be I wanted everyone to be able to complete it without too much hassle. And so if you're willing to accept a bit of chip damage, the game is way easier. And people who are finding it easy enough that they can avoid all damage are naturally aiming for that. That's good too, because it means they're just playing at their comfort level. Yeah.
My final question on the playtesting stuff is, what kind of advice do you have for other indie developers who are thinking about where and how to sort of fit this into their schedule? Sort of like, does the purpose change of playtesting over time? And like, do you have a kind of framework for like, I know that we need at least 3 and they're always at these sort of, or do you just kind of, and how much time do you leave to, because obviously when you get a playtest data, you've got to wait for it to go out. You've got to wait for the data to come back. You got to pass it. Then you've got to have the time to iterate again.
Yeah. It's really time expensive, unfortunately. Like it's really important, but it also takes ages. I've ended up with Wizards at least. My estimation is it takes about 2 months to do a playtest because there's getting it ready for public consumption. Your in-dev build, you can't just put it out there. There's a ton of stuff you haven't tutorialized yet. There's a ton of flow stuff that needs fixing, loads of stuff that just isn't ready for outside eyes yet. So you've got a ton of work there. I always try to pair a call for testers with something like a trailer, something I'm releasing to get publicity. I want to pair, here's going to be our high visibility moments when we release a new trailer. Let's sync that up with when we need testers, because I'm going to give you something because I need something from you. And we do that even though we have enough testers on our mailing list, because I always want fresh people as much as possible.
Of course. Do you find that like, the sort of the tissue theory or analogy where it's like, once a tester's used, you can't bring them back again, like
I haven't heard them called tissues before, but I like that. Mostly like I want as many new eyes on it as possible, because I don't want a rabbit hole on making the game suited to the most hardcore players.
Of course,
I think we fell foul of that a little bit on heat signature. We're still trying for new testers all the time, but I think people who are finding the game difficult underreported, and so it was a little bit hard on launch. I think I'm probably missing a trick where experienced testers who played the game before, there probably is a bunch of feedback they can be giving me that would be really useful. I just don't have an easy way of distinguishing it. We've had it before, and we did it with Wizards actually, where we ask you, have you played before? I'm trying to invite all new testers, but I might have failed. You might be on my mailing list twice or something like that.
Okay, right.
Or you might have got into one test one way and this test another way. So I wanted to know that. But yeah, if you have old testers mixed in with new testers, the feedback can be so misleading, because it can be like loads of people saying it's way too easy. Is that because they played the whole thing before, so they know the puzzle solutions? Especially with Wizards, where it's fixed content, all handcrafted. Someone who's played it before is such a different perspective. But those people would be great at finding bugs. They'd be great at finding balance problems. They'd be great at finding the fact that you can kill that boss early that you're not supposed to be able to kill. They would have been perfect for that. But yeah, I want fresh testers as much as possible. So yeah, we pair it usually with some kind of trailer, even if it's just a little devlog kind of thing. So that takes time to make. Then setting up the form, I have to write, at least adapt the old form to the new build to ask about new enemies and stuff like that. But, like I say, I really, really like survey questions that I can see a graph of later. Like I want to see numbers on how many people are liking this enemy. We did an update for Heat Signature a year afterwards that added very different enemy types. Like really, they're called contractors. They're extremely nasty people who like hunt you down. And there was one called the Predator who has this huge radius around them where they can both detect you and teleport to you and stab you all in one move. So it's just a death circle. If you go in that circle, you are just dead no matter what. And which is crazy and it's not a fair thing, but effectively having a big death circle that moves around the ship is really strategically interesting to trying to avoid that and just knowing like this fucker is coming for me. I've got to do something about this. So it was a good mechanic, but early on it was both the most loved and most hated enemy in the first test.
Right, like completely split down the middle sort of thing.
Yeah, we just asked separately. So it wasn't necessarily like rank these enemies. It was just like name your best enemies, name your worst enemies. And yeah, this one was the most liked and the most hated. And then I read the feedback and it was we'd just gone too far with it. It used to be the circle would pulse, so it would get bigger and smaller. So it's like extra hard to judge. Yeah. And I think it was like twice the size that it is now. And I think he moved faster than he does now. And it was just like, this is a good idea. Yeah. It's just we went way too far with it. Just scale it way the fuck back. It's already brutal. So let's just have the easiest, most controlled version of it that people can deal with. And then, we saw exactly what you'd hope, which is that all the positivity stayed and the negativity just dropped down massively. So I love graphs like that. I just want to see the results of my actions in a way that it's also very like emotionally neutral to see that. Like reading feedback can be really tough. I've got quite a thin skin and sometimes someone can just like phrase something in a really like cruel way and it just gets to me for like weeks afterwards. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I told you somebody's feedback like word for word that I received 9 years ago about that drifting through space thing. Like I remember almost every word they said because I was like, fuck, I really made this person angry. And in that case I think there was a useful lesson there, but sometimes there isn't. Sometimes someone's just gonna be real fucking nasty about something that's actually fine. It's just their one particular hang up and it's gonna stick with you and it's gonna haunt you, and as you make design decisions they're gonna be influencing you. And I know I'm kind of vulnerable to that, so I don't like to read a ton of negative feedback. If I can help it, I'd rather see the graph first. If there's a big problem, if loads of people are having a problem, then I want to read the feedback and see what the issue is because I need to understand it. But I don't want to just read unfiltered text about the game because it can be pretty depressing. We have a bunch of different vectors for it. So there's the survey that we ask people to fill in when they're done with the game. That used to be all we did. And then because Heat Signature at launch, reviewers especially were struggling with the game, and if you are only doing easy missions in Heat Signature, your rate of progress is very slow, and then the game feels grindy, where it doesn't if you do progress onto harder missions. We missed that in testing because we only got manually expressed feedback. People just told us what they thought. We had no actual metrics or anything. So for Wizards, we built a programmer, John Winder, built an analytics system where we get actual data on how often people died on a certain level, how many rewinds they used, how long it took. And then I think actually the most important thing for Wizards was we also do something in between, which is at the end of every level, we ask you to rate it, and just good, bad, neutral. And we ask you to, if you rate it negative, then we ask you for an explanation.
And that was in build, in the playtesting build. So cool.
Yeah. The same system we also use for you can just hit a button to report a bug or some feedback in the moment. That's super useful because it gets tagged with what level they're on. They can say whether it's a suggestion, whether it's a complaint, whether it's something they liked, whether it's something they hated, and then you can filter by that on the back end. This is a plugin that I think we got from the asset store for connecting Unity to Trello. So it's all a Trello board for the feedback. But then, ultimately we have a analytics export of the ratings of every level, and then also a Trello board that has people's feedback tagged with what level it's about. So I can look at a graph and see where the spikes of negatives are and then I can search for that level's name in the Trello thing and find what everybody said about it, and then I read those.
Yeah, great.
And usually the problem is incredibly obvious. It's just like, oh yeah,
you're like, all right, I see.
This level can't be completed, or we just like made a huge balance mistake with it or something. And that is really powerful and really satisfying. Like that graph. Me and Steve Lee worked on chasing those problems down throughout development. And then towards the end of it, the final push, last beta, it was just my job for a couple of weeks to get every level below 10% negative, I think was my maximum accepted ratings. And early on, there was like one that was like 27. There's a bunch of like 20s and stuff. And just grinding through that and just finding every little bit of feedback, going and changing the levels, real quick changes, then testing it. It was this was all kind of one rolling beta towards the end. We did like different waves of it and that, but ultimately there were a lot of different releases, so I could just quickly I think we did like 3 rounds of that, and I got to see that graph just go from like big scars of red across the bars to like lesser red, then 0 red, and just a couple of oranges.
Amazing.
And that just feels so good. It's like,
hell
I did it. I made the game good.
It sounds, interestingly, all of this work that you're doing and like diving into the graphs and everything, it sounds like you finally found your actuary position as well. Okay. I do want to, we could talk for ages, but we got to wrap up soon. So the last thing that I want to ask you about is the evidence board. Okay. Right. It's just such a cool feature. And it's one of those things that like, in a big studio or something like that, it might not survive because it's like, what function is it actually serving? But it serves a really great purpose in my mind of like zooming out and getting a sort of like a bird's eye view of the narrative and understanding how these things relate to each other. Because it does have that like Call of Duty, like, military techno thriller sort of like spin to it, right? Yeah. The narrative where you're following these people around like the different parts of the world. Talk to me a little bit about like how that idea came about, and like even just the interactivity of it. So for our listeners, essentially it's like a Charlie Day, like crazy mind map, the evidence board from the FBI movies or whatever, and you can actually move it around yourself. And then in the game, it prompts you to sort of connect things together, and it can tell you whether you're right or wrong with linking this character to these things and stuff. So it's a really great mechanic.
Thanks. Yeah, that was really important to me. It's it does exist in a weird space because it's interactive, but you don't make any choices. And there's a right and wrong answer, but it's not meant to be a challenge. Yeah. So it's doesn't quite fit into any particular category. But like you say, it does serve a role. The direct inspiration was a game called Phantom Doctrine, which is like a spy XCOM. And it has that mechanic. And the first time you do it, you are piecing together story clues. And then from then on, it's randomly generated. So it's just like matching keywords in documents. But of course, it becomes a lot less satisfying when it like doesn't mean anything to the story. But the main thing I learned from that is like, letting the player drag this stuff around is both satisfying for the player and also relieves you as the developer of the burden of laying it out in a nice way. Yes, it's actually your problem to make this look good.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little expression space. It's cool. Yeah. And then also it's a great way of making sure that the player is understanding the sort of the meta plot of like the narrative and how characters are moving around too.
So the reason I wanted to make one just because it was cool, but also I realized it would solve a problem we had with Gunpoint, which is Gunpoint has a twisty-turny noir plot. There's a lot of tell, don't show, because like doing narrative story events is a huge pain in the ass. And to some extent it sort of fit the noir vibe of like there's complex things going on that you don't understand. And we got really good feedback on like the dialogue in Gunpoint. People like the writing, but I don't think that many people really actually followed the plot. I think that people are pretty fuzzy on what actually happened in that game and like why it happened. And it's hopefully it's like, one of my favorite movies is LA Confidential. And the first time I saw it, absolutely loved it. I don't think I could have told you what the plot, like, or like I couldn't have told you why the plot happened. I can tell you the beats of it, but I don't really know what was that shipment of heroin, like who did steal that ultimately. Yeah. And the answers are all there, but it's okay to feel a little bit left behind. But at the same time, I was like, that the complexity versus visibility ratio of that game was way out of whack. And so I wanted, especially with Wizards, I wanted people to just like, I do want you to follow every beat of this. It's meant to be, a mystery conspiracy thing. I need you to care about what you don't know and therefore understand what you do know. And that I'm a very visual thinker and I lose track if I'm reading a book and like 3 people have a name beginning with B. I do not know which is which now.
It's over. Yeah.
So I need things laid out, and especially like like you say, it summarizes the important bits. There's tons of story that is not on that board because you don't need to think about it. Like it doesn't, the rest of the plot is not going to depend on what this one character said in this one scene. But you do need to remember who Liv Kennedy is and which team she works for and what her relationship is to Reactor. There's like a little bit of a weird relationship there where like she works for them, but she feels like she's in charge really. And so that relationship just being right there on the board for you, to remind you. And each of those things you can click on to get like a full flavor text description. Making the plot clear, reminding you of it, having you make those connections. The reason it is interactive, but not meaningfully interactive is I wanted you to make the connection manually to cement it in your mind, because I find information that I've had to use to do something sticks in my brain much better. I think this is like a technique for like teaching languages too, right? It's like if you, after you've been told something, now use it in a sentence, now answer an exam question, now repeat it to yourself like every day or whatever. Once you've had to use information, it sticks in your brain better. And teaching the player that like the story information you're hearing, you're going to need it. Like, we're just going to ask you some very basic, very easy questions, but just to check you understood. And if you don't understand, all the information you need to understand is there on the board. So you can drill into the items and find out what they say about them. Usually I phrase those in such a way that they specifically mention the relationship that you're going to need to establish. And then if that doesn't work, there's also like a hint button that you can just ask Zan, and Zan will be like, oh yeah, didn't Liv say that she's going to Kalan next or whatever?
So something I didn't, because I just obviously connected them and then went through the process and moved on all the time. But so I wasn't actually able to tell. Do you force the players to do it? Can you sort of get to the mind map and go, no, I'm not going to connect them, I'm just going to jump back into the missions? Or
no, you have to do it. And that's been a bit of a sticking point, because it does break a philosophy we always had of like, you can always skip story stuff in our games. And I didn't let you skip it initially. You know, the point of it is to check you understood. If you don't understand, we need to know that you don't understand.
Yeah, of course,
and make sure you do understand. So it felt necessary for that reason. But then also later on, I started to cave on that and think, well, maybe we should let you skip it. And then I realized actually it's quite hard to let you skip it, because next time you come to a map stage, we load your map, right? We can't load the map that has you left it because you didn't solve it. Right? That stuff needs to be solved. We could have made a script to like solve it for you, like algorithmically, but it would have been quite a lot of work. So what we're actually adding this now. I don't know if it's live at the time of recording, but we are going to let you skip those, and it's just going to do what it does when you skip it in developer mode, which is it just loads a pre-made map. We warn you about that. It's like, I mean, the position of these things, like I say, there isn't a lot of meaningful interactivity. You're not going to be too attached to it, but I didn't want to just wipe that from the player without telling them. So there's a message about like, this will just load like a preset configuration next time. But we still keep track of like what you've read and what you haven't, because that's useful to keep track of. But yeah, you do have to do it. And that was a slightly awkward thing. And now you don't. Just going back to that philosophy of like, honestly, if you're stuck on this, because actually something I didn't think about is our game is not localized, and I don't recommend buying it if you don't speak English, but some people did buy it when they don't speak English. We're clear that it is only in English, there's no translation offered. But some of those people, like, it was fine. I didn't mind like getting through the whole game, but these map stages, like, I can't read the text.
And I'm
getting stuck on how to connect these things.
Yeah, of course. Right. Progression is based on only at that point, really, on your comprehension of the language. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, hey, Tom, absolutely phenomenal chatting to you. It's great. I feel really spoiled. Usually we'll get a chance to hang out or something, but we don't usually get 2 hours or whatever to dig into your games and what's going on for you. You're also up for an award tonight. Strategy simulation, right?
Yep. Don't think we have any chance, but just happy to be here.
There's a couple other heavy hitters in there, for sure. No, but best of luck. I'll be there. I'll be hooting and hollering for you from the tables. All the best with the success of the game. Are you like kind of updating it, doing some things, or are you moving on to something else?
Yeah, just little patches. I'm definitely thinking about the next project and doing some planning on it, but it hasn't officially started yet. We're still sort of throwing ideas around, which is an exciting stage to be at. But also I've needed a lot of recovery time after this one. It was 6.5 years, and there's just like a cumulative effect after that.
Yeah, it's a big one. Ironically, I had one here about scope, but I mean, we're at 2.5 hours, so the scope of this episode's blowing out as well.
Yeah,
so
we're both game developers, so this is going to happen.
All right, man, well, have a great dice.
Thanks.